The black-haired youth looks down pensively as bright sunlight washes over his melancholic face. Standing in a bustling crowd, the black-haired youth seems completely disconnected from his surroundings. Looking down at the crowded intersection, Fushimi expresses his sudden confusion aloud. As terrifying, multi-eyed monsters loom over a young boy, a narration points out one specific beast. Blood streams down the battered face of the young boy as he grits his teeth. A text box identifies the bloodied, wide-eyed child staring in horror as a 12-year-old boy. Fushimi holds his crimson dagger as a text box identifies him as the first survivor, Fushimi Yugo, and he notes the weapon is his previous survival reward. A brown-haired woman fires her shotgun while a bandaged man looks on in pure shock. Fushimi maneuvers past a red-suited monster as a powerful blast explodes on the creature's head. Fushimi glances back over his shoulder and praises Hanamura for her excellent shot. Hanamura boastfully attributes her shotgun skills to playing shooter games, proving that endless hours of gaming finally paid off. Standing over the defeated red-suited monster, Fushimi suddenly reacts with surprise to an unexpected event. The bandaged man points out something below, prompting a shocked reaction from Hanamura. Hanamura excitedly questions if the glowing yellow cube floating over the corpse is an item drop. Fushimi corrects her and comments on how lucky Hanamura is to have received this specific drop. A system notification reveals that the golden cube is a rare drop with a 3% drop rate. The bandaged man questions the abnormal length of the hallway, and the gray-haired young man explains that warped space is common in Demon Falls. The old man inquires about the upcoming fight, and the gray-haired young man replies that they might face either a single tough foe or multiple underlings. The old man adds that they might also encounter a gimmick boss requiring a specific procedure, while Fushimi remains silent. Hanamura implores Fushimi to stop hiding his condition, asking why he staggered just now and reminding him he did so previously. Hanamura gasps in sudden realization, her eyes widening as she looks at Fushimi. Fushimi looks down silently, sweating as he avoids eye contact with his companion. Fushimi decides to confess his secret to Hanamura, explaining that his ability, Vessel of Pain, reproduces attacks he has previously suffered. Fushimi compares the ability to a painful relapse, prompting Hanamura to realize the horrifying implications. Hanamura asks Fushimi in horror if every single attack he reproduces represents pain he personally suffered. Hanamura lists his past traumas, including being cut by swords, pierced by spears, melted by acid, and pelted by arrows. Fushimi offers a sad, quiet smile, acknowledging the grim reality of his past suffering. Tears well up in Hanamura's eyes as the weight of his tragic past sinks in. Fushimi lightheartedly commends Hanamura for her knowledge, but she angrily retorts that his deflection is missing the point. Fushimi silently reflects on the tragedy of that fateful day in Shinjuku. Fushimi recalls how the terror of that experience led him to shut himself away in his home. Fushimi realizes that despite his efforts to hide, he ultimately could not run from his situation. Akira asks if they have found the Ringmaster, and Fushimi confirms its presence feels different from other enemies. A caption announces the arrival of the Ringmaster as the theatrical figure hovers menacingly above. With a grotesque smile, the Ringmaster states his anticipation of their acquaintance. Hanamura asks if they should open fire, but Fushimi commands her to wait until they understand the opponent's movements. Fushimi analyzes their disadvantageous position, plotting to use his spear ability to vault up toward the elevated Ringmaster. Fushimi discards his vaulting plan as too reckless, wondering what the enemy intends to do as the Ringmaster prepares his horn. The Ringmaster blows into his horn, releasing a resonant blast that catches Fushimi's group off guard. Eerie purple vortexes erupt from the floor, prompting a startled reaction from Fushimi. A giant demonic rat with glowing red eyes emerges aggressively from the purple vortex. The Ringmaster declares the start of the show as a horde of demonic rats surrounds the party. The bandaged man shouts that minions have been summoned, while Fushimi realizes they are dealing with a summoner-type boss. Fushimi realizes the boss's high positioning strategy and asks Hakura if he has electric attacks to blind the enemies. Hakura confirms he has a blinding technique, but Fushimi instructs him to hold back and await his signal. Hakura and Fushimi stand ready to confront the massive red-eyed rat lunging toward them. Fushimi commands everyone to spread out while activating his Vessel of Pain ability to transform his weapon. Fushimi unleashes his spear ability, driving a crimson-charged weapon directly into the descending beast. The red-hot spear pierces the flesh of the giant rat's face with incredible force. Fushimi grits his teeth in shock as he realizes his transformed blade cannot pierce the beast. Caught completely off guard, the black-haired Fushimi watches in shock as a massive tail slashes directly at him. Fushimi struggles to dodge the relentless assault, gritting his teeth as he realizes the sheer speed of his monstrous opponent. Sweating under pressure, Fushimi notes with dread that the giant beast coordinates its tail attack seamlessly with its claws. As Hakura warns that he cannot offer any protection, Fushimi decides to switch tactics upon realizing his blade cannot pierce the creature's tough hide. Fushimi summons his Vessel of Pain, unleashing the blunt trauma of a massive hammer strike to crush the beast. He watches in satisfaction as the heavy blunt attack bypasses the monster's defenses and successfully inflicts a pain debuff. Seizing the opportunity, Fushimi commands his allies to concentrate their fire on the staggered creature. A powerful barrage of gunshots bombards the beast, filling the chamber with blinding flashes of light. While Hanamura struggles against the monster's durability, Gohei advises that blunt force is the key to halting its movements. Knowing they have a brief opening, Fushimi presses forward with his hammer to deliver another heavy blow. With a thunderous impact, Fushimi crushes the giant beast and sends it crashing down. Suddenly, another ravenous demonic rat lunges from the shadows directly at the black-haired youth. Fushimi reacts instantly, raising his weapon to block the razor-sharp claws in a shower of sparks. Gritting his teeth, Fushimi realizes with frustration that their defenses are barely holding against the enemy's insane durability. He desperately holds his ground as the monsters launch a coordinated attack, finding their strength increasingly difficult to handle. A sudden, loud explosion detonates against the beast, offering a momentary reprieve from the relentless onslaught. Sliding backward to regroup, Gohei explains his high-risk shooting tactic while noting the difficulty of taking down even a single monster. Hovering maliciously above them, the masked ringmaster mocks their struggles and gleefully prepares to summon even more underlings. Eerie purple vortexes erupt from the floor, signaling the arrival of an overwhelming wave of demonic reinforcements. As the brown-haired companion panics at the doubled enemy numbers, he urgently shouts for Gohei to ready his heaviest rifle. Surrounded on all sides, the desperate fighters realize they must unleash their most powerful weapons to survive the horde. While Gohei decides to stop holding back, an enraged Hanamura prepares her weapon as the theatrical boss plays his horn. Looking up at the hovering enemy, Fushimi draws a parallel between the ringmaster's music and the legendary Pied Piper of Hamelin. As the monstrous rats charge, a sudden spark of inspiration hits Fushimi, signaling a potential counter-strategy. Fushimi calls out to Hanamura, urgently commanding her to summon her rare cat item to turn the tables. Fushimi reasons that because this trial mirrors the Pied Piper myth, they must deploy the ultimate natural predator of the rats. He watches the approaching horde, confidently identifying them as the vulnerable targets of his new plan. Hanamura's eyes widen in sudden realization as she finally understands the true purpose of her rare item drop. Reaching her hand out, Hanamura summons her glowing feline companion to the battlefield. The small, golden-eyed cat stands fearlessly on the checkered floor, staring down the massive, lunging pests. Feline's golden aura explodes outward, transforming the small cat into a towering, terrifying spectral beast. A massive, fanged maw looms over the trembling rodents, instantly shifting the dynamic of the hunt. The colossal cat effortlessly swats and crushes the demonic rats, turning the battlefield into its personal playground. Terrified by their ultimate natural predator, the remaining giant rats freeze in complete horror. While Hanamura happily cheers for her powerful pet, Gohei looks on in shock, comparing the massive beast to a giant lion. Sensing the tide of battle turning, Fushimi charges forward and calls on a Haikura to unleash his electric skill. Hakura warns his companions to shield their eyes as he prepares to unleash his ultimate blinding technique. A brilliant flash of electricity illuminates the entire chamber, blinding all enemies in the vicinity. Shielding his face in agony, the blinded ringmaster loses his footing and exposes himself to attack. Fushimi exploits the opening immediately, leaping high into the air toward his target with incredible force. He materializes directly behind the blinded boss, readying his glowing red chains with deadly precision. Fushimi coldly declares that the arrogant entertainer's performance has officially come to an end. He loops the heavy crimson link securely around the helpless boss, trapping him in a tight bind. Activating his vessel of pain, Fushimi channels the excruciating memory of being crushed by heavy chains into his target. With a furious battle cry, Fushimi pulls the glowing chains taut with all his strength. The ringmaster screams in absolute agony as the spectral chains constrict his body. Fushimi slams the theatrical boss violently into the floor below, shattering his defense completely. Gohei commands everyone to focus their fire, unleashing a barrage of gunshots directly at the fallen opponent. Fushimi calls for a ceasefire, warily approaching the thick smoke to confirm the boss's defeat. An ominous towering silhouette begins to rise from the dissipating dust, indicating the threat is far from resolved. The bleeding, grin-masked ringmaster laughs and praises the group's tactical performance as absolutely magnificent. He continues to commend their exceptionally quick reactions, sound combat judgment, and decisive battle tactics. Preparing his next move, the theatrical foe declares that it is time for the main act. Fushimi stands alarmed, bracing himself as dark smoke and crushing pressure consume the battlefield. Gohei and Hanamura watch in pure shock as the atmosphere undergoes a terrifying transformation. A system notification materializes, announcing the terrifying arrival of the ringmaster's colossal second form. Shattering glass rains down as the giant boss commands his enemies to dance for him. Panicking as the structure crumbles, Hakura urgently screams for all of his allies to retreat. Gohei commands the fleeing fighters to spread out and avoid bunching together under fire. Fushimi takes the lead, yelling for the panicking party to split into 3 squads. The grinning ringmaster mocks their squad split just as Gohei fires his sniper rifle. A sudden boom echoes as Gohei's bullet detonates directly in front of the boss's face. The damaged ringmaster begrudgingly commends them for possessing such remarkable insight into his secrets. The villain lets them escape for now, finding amusement in the coming chase. An ominous voice echoes, stating that escaping only makes the hunt much more fun. Fushimi confidently explains to a surprised Hanamura that the ringmaster's true body is actually the flute. He recalls how the giant prioritized protecting the flute during both his and Gohei's attacks. Fushimi reasons that taking a direct hit to the face to protect the instrument confirms it is his weak point. Fushimi counters the bandaged man's skepticism, arguing that a truly healthy giant wouldn't require summons. He adds that his pain skill failed to trigger, proving the giant clown is a puppet. Fushimi points out that the creature referred to itself in the third person during its introduction. He reflects that these trials are never entirely rigged and always provide a path to victory. Fushimi explains that the creators leave a sliver of hope just to mock those who fail. After noting the creator's rotten personality, Fushimi directs the group to head to the rendezvous. A sudden crackle of yellow lightning violently tears through the approaching wave of puppet minions. Hakura channels his electric energy, urgently commanding his nearby allies to move immediately. Hakura warns the shooters not to fire while inwardly questioning why he's risking his life. Despairing over their lack of manpower, Hakura realizes their only realistic hope is a miraculous reinforcement. Hakura takes a moment to breathe, relieved that he has successfully shaken the giant off his tail. Discarding his pride, Hakura runs forward, focused solely on survival in this relentless trial. The scattered group successfully reunites inside a dimly lit structure to coordinate their final strategy. Gohei acknowledges the flute as their target, impressed that Fushimi deduced the same weak point. Hakura expresses doubt, questioning if a single hit on the flute can defeat such a massive foe. Fushimi suggests applying a pain debuff to the flute, confidently noting his ability works on non-living targets. He explains that because musical instruments are highly delicate, almost the entire flute qualifies as a vital point. Gohei realizes they can bypass the giant's physical defense by focusing entirely on the fragile instrument. Fushimi compares the giant's imposing body to a simple wall that they must cleverly bypass. To strike the elevated target, Fushimi proposes they scale the ruins to match the giant's height. Despite Hakura's hesitation, Fushimi maintains that their unique weapons will successfully draw the boss's focus. Fushimi outlines their primary objective, keeping the boss distracted and away from Gohei's sniper squad. This distraction will allow Gohei's team to find a clear shot at the delicate flute. A sudden system notification catches the bandaged man off guard, drawing his immediate attention. He gasps in astonishment as he reads the unexpected details displayed on the interface. A loud echoing crash sounds as the outer wall of the structure suddenly begins to buckle. Panic flares as Fushimi and Hakura realize the giant boss has already detected their position. A massive clawed hand swoops down, prompting an urgent warning that the attack is coming. When Hakura panics about the building collapsing, Fushimi bluntly replies that it would mean game over. Fushimi cheekily remarks that he has full faith in the country's famous earthquake-resistant architecture. The giant hand smashes violently through the roof, sending shards of concrete raining down. Inside the crumbling building, the bandaged man shrieks in terror as glass and debris shatter around him. Surprised that the building remains standing, Fushimi realizes the giant's strike is far lighter than its massive size suggests. Running from the giant puppet, Fushimi deduces that its massive body lacks real density and can be treated like a giant balloon. Confident in his assessment, Fushimi prepares to launch his crowd control ability to lock the balloon-like giant in place. The colossal clown boss lets out a low grunt as smoke drifts from his golden flute. Fushimi is shocked and thrilled to see his pain debuff successfully transferring over to the delicate flute. Seizing the perfect opportunity, Gohei barks out a command and fires a powerful shot from his rifle. Hanamura and her companion brace themselves as loud explosions shake the immediate battlefield. Mocking their desperate efforts, the shadowed ringmaster claims he knows exactly what their strategy is with that gunshot. Gohei and his ally look back in sheer terror as a sudden massive threat approaches. The theatrical boss swings a long dark whip with terrifying speed and precision. Gohei and his partner realize in horror that the giant boss is wielding a deadly training whip. A violent impact shatters the terrain, sending debris flying everywhere as the whip strikes. Panicking as they flee the devastating destruction, the younger man compares the terrifying encounter to a monster film. Gohei gasps in shock as a brilliant, blinding light suddenly erupts through the nearby window. The sharp, blade-tipped whip tears violently through concrete barriers and shatters everything in its path. The destructive force of the attack blows the sniper squad completely out of their positions. Fushimi realizes with dread that the boss's whip splits into multiple blade-tipped ends that move completely at will. Clutching his weapon, Fushimi urgently orders Hakura to keep up with them as they change positions. Fushimi halts in surprise as a glowing blade of yellow light blocks his path. Hakura stops Fushimi in his tracks, raising his glowing blade of light to demand a moment. Hakura reiterates his command to stop, refusing to let Fushimi rush headlong into danger. Facing absolute despair, Hakura warns that their final plan has failed and staying will only result in death. Angered by Hakura's defeatism, Fushimi questions why he is giving up when failing the trial guarantees death anyway. Hakura argues that retreating offers a slim chance of surviving the punishment game, unlike a direct battle. Hakura desperately begs Fushimi to flee with him, claiming they can easily survive by simply running away. Hakura insists that choosing self-preservation over sacrificial combat is the only logical path to survival. Clenching Fushimi's collar, Hakura fiercely declares that raw survival is all that truly matters right now. Shaking with emotion, Hakura begs his companion to agree with his plan to escape together. Hakura desperately implores Fushimi to admit they share the same drive to survive at any cost. Fushimi remains silent as Hakura tightly grips his shirt in a desperate plea. Looking at his desperate friend, Fushimi offers a sad, understanding smile of resignation. Fushimi quietly acknowledges Hakura's logic, admitting he cannot refute his points or force him to stay. Gently removing Hakura's hand from his shirt, Fushimi firmly declares that he cannot run away. Hakura stares in complete disbelief and heartbreak at Fushimi's refusal to flee with him. Fushimi reminds Hakura of the intense grief of loss, explaining how losing comrades slowly destroys a person's soul. Looking down, Fushimi confesses that having allowed so many allies to perish has left his own heart completely empty. Fushimi vows that he must protect the remaining piece of his soul, refusing to abandon his allies. Fushimi explains that if he runs away, the sacrifices of the hundreds of thousands who died before will be entirely in vain. Hakura listens in stunned silence, deeply affected by the heavy burden Fushimi carries. Softening his tone, Fushimi gently asks Hakura if he was expecting to be scolded for his cowardice. Fushimi apologizes with a soft sigh as he turns to head back into the fray. Fushimi leaps back into the chaotic battle zone with total focus and resolve. He slides a glowing head along the surface, readying his pain absorption ability once more. A narrative system notification describes the excruciating sensation of a hook tearing flesh. Sliding down a crumbling wall, Fushimi desperately shouts for Gohei to hold on. Ringmaster grunts in sudden pain as Fushimi's debuff takes effect. Hanamura taunts the boss, pointing out that leaving his weak point exposed is typical of classic action games. Hanamura checks on Gohei, desperately hoping he has survived the devastating assault. Coughing blood, Gohei fondly praises her spirit, joking that he would want her as a daughter-in-law before firing. The system notification delivers a final crushing debuff detailing the pain of a battle axe strike. The ringmaster reacts with utter shock and bewilderment. Fushimi grunts in frustration, realizing the target is too hard to cut. A system notification details the excruciating pain of being blasted back by a powerful shockwave. A massive shockwave detonates across the red battlefield with a loud clashing boom. The loud crunch, Fushimi slides violently across the dirt, kicking up massive clouds of dust. Smiling mockingly, the ringmaster states that Fushimi blew himself away just to escape. Fushimi resolvedly prepares another attack, determined to trigger his pain debuff despite his suffering. Fushimi mentally urges himself to endure the agony for one final massive technique. A close-up shows a hand tightly gripping a pistol, readying to fire. Boom! The bullet detonates on the ringmaster, forcing a grunt of surprise. Electric gold crackles run wild as a powerful surge strikes the villain. The bandaged man confidently remarks that his plan worked, shocking Fushimi. The bandaged man notes his risky shot was definitely worth a try. System narration confirms he barely made it in time using the elevator. The bandaged man orders Fushimi to retreat inside as they flee the giant puppet. The bandaged man explains that a gold coin he picked up became a bullet. Fushimi realizes the coin represents the unpaid reward from the original Hamlin story. A system message reveals the gold coin round paralyzes the ringmaster for 3 seconds. The narrative warns that this critical stun only grants them a tiny breathing room. Thud! A massive, clawed hand suddenly descends toward the battlefield with a heavy crash. Hakura drops down, unleashing a massive lightning strike that shocks the ringmaster. Hakura screams curses in pure rage as he strikes the stunned villain. Fushimi screams in shock as the silver-haired Hakura channels an immense electrical charge. Voices echo through the crackling lightning, cursing Hakura for refusing to flee the battle. A nostalgic memory recalls a teacher asking young Hakura about his future dream job. Young Hakura proudly shows his drawing, declaring his dream of becoming a hero. Gritting his teeth, Hakura curses himself for remembering such a childish dream. With a brutal, swift punch, the ringmaster sends Hakura flying through the air. The ringmaster boasts that a standard stun will never work on you again. Fushimi runs to help Hakura, ignoring the bandaged man's desperate warnings to stop. Gohei laments that the giant's solid guard prevents a clear shot at the flute. A bright explosion detonates directly against the ringmaster's lower body in a blinding flash. Ringmaster begrudgingly respects Hakura's bravery as Hanamura stands ready with a rifle. Hanamura smiles defiantly, challenging his mocking view of those playing the hero. The ringmaster creepily commends her bravery as the tension on the field peaks. The ringmaster raises his whip, coldly stating that her bravery will be her end. A sudden sense of dread washes over Hanamura as she senses an oncoming strike. Fushimi frantically sprints forward, desperate to reach Hanamura before it is too late. Thud! A blade-tipped whip brutally impales Hanamura straight through the chest. A chilling system text states that her heroic bravery has led to her downfall. Fushimi screams Hanamura's name in pure horror as he witnesses the devastating attack. Hanamura is suspended limply in the air, impaled by the devastating blood-covered whip. Fushimi yells in absolute agony as a blood-splattered Hanamura slowly loses consciousness. Standing tall, the ringmaster callously mocks them, commenting on the sad death of a hero. The ringmaster violently whips his arm, throwing her limp body away like trash. The ringmaster coldly barks a command for his minions to take her body. Fushimi watches in utter horror as Hanamura's blood-soaked body falls from the sky. Swish! Fushimi slides across the dirt, safely catching Hanamura in his arms. Shaking with absolute shock, Fushimi quietly mutters her name as he cradles her. The heavy realization sinks in that her fatal chest wound cannot be treated. Shocked and trembling with grief, Fushimi can only utter a desperate, broken refusal of reality. Hanamura remains completely silent, bleeding heavily from her face as her consciousness fades away. Holding her close, Fushimi desperately screams Hanamura's name and asks what she has done. A dark thought surfaces, assuring him that he does not have to be the only one. Fushimi stares ahead in stunned silence, completely paralyzed by the unfolding tragedy. The internal voice continues, promising a release from the burden of being alone. Smiling weakly through the blood on her face, Hanamura hopes she is the only one who suffers. Fushimi looks down, his eyes wide with a mixture of profound shock and deep sorrow. Hanamura smiles peacefully with closed eyes, a fatal chest wound staining her shirt deep red. Fushimi gently cradles her limp body, realizing the severity of her bloody chest wound. Holding her tightly, Fushimi hunches over on the ground, completely consumed by mourning. Standing tall in the smoke, the ringmaster callously mocks Fushimi, claiming this loss must hurt the deepest. The villain notes how Gohei and his companion exhausted every trick and tactic to survive. Akura lies beaten and unconscious among the concrete ruins, having pushed himself to his physical limit. The ringmaster continues his cruel speech, pointing out that Fushimi gave his absolute all. He highlights the ultimate despair of helplessly watching the person you wanted to protect die. Towering over them, the ringmaster sadistically asks if this emotional torment is pure agony. From his sniping position, Gohei grunts in frustration, unable to find a clean opening. The ringmaster's massive shadow looms over the grieving pair, offering to end Fushimi's misery. Raising his weapon, the villain mockingly bids farewell to Yugo Fushimi after a fine show. A dark narrative block reflects on a profound pain that can never be fully recalled. Shattered red shards of his mind query if his past memories were cut out by intense trauma. The shards reveal a multi-eyed monstrosity, wondering if he is simply too afraid to remember. Suddenly, a massive pillar of bright teal light erupts around them, startling the ringmaster. Divine energy envelops Hanamura's chest wound, signaling the awakening of an unimaginable force. Blood and tears stream down Hanamura's face as the intense magical energy continues to swell. The blazing column of teal fire shoots skyward, completely illuminating the dark, war-torn battlefield. Crying a single glowing tear, Fushimi glares at the boss, promising to make him understand pain. Gritting his teeth in surprise, the ringmaster takes a step back as his confidence wavers. Enveloped in the terrifying blue aura, the villain panics as his body refuses to strike. Trembling violently, the ringmaster realizes his body is completely paralyzed by sheer primal terror. The glowing light instills an instinctual dread, warning him of a lethal threat. He experiences a terrifying alien sensation of weakness that he has never known before. Fushimi extends his glowing hand, channeling his ultimate concentrated power into a physical form. The narrative warns of an absolute destructive force that wipes out everything, leaving nothing behind. A system announcement triggers the activation of his personal formula armament, the Shape of Pain. Standing tall, Fushimi readies his ultimate weapon as the radiant power condenses around his arm. The ringmaster recoils in horror as Fushimi unleashes a blazing slash of pure blue light. The concentrated blast embodies the crushing, absolute pain of losing someone incredibly precious. Tears stream from Fushimi's eyes as he screams in rage, losing control of his emotions. Fushimi stands in a wide stance, brandishing a massive glowing blue sword of condensed pain. Screaming in high-pitched terror, the ringmaster is completely consumed by the terrifying blue energy. Grimacing, Fushimi admits that he obviously cannot endure this overwhelming torment either. He asserts that anyone who has never known pain could never bear this level of agony. The brown-haired companion stares in utter shock, illuminated by the blinding blue afterglow. Gohei looks down from his sniper nest, completely stunned by the magnitude of the attack. Even the unconscious Hakura lies bathed in the fading remnants of the powerful blue light. As the energy dissipates, Fushimi stands completely alone amidst the quiet, crumbling ruins. With a grim expression, Fushimi slowly walks forward through the thick smoke and ash. Spotting him, his injured companion rushes forward while calling out Fushimi's name in relief. Overwhelmed by exhaustion and grief, the black-haired boy collapses heavily onto the dust-filled ground. Grieving over the fallen girl, the black-haired boy tearfully apologizes to her lifeless body. The brown-haired companion runs toward them, desperately shouting that they won the battle. The brown-haired companion holds the boy back, somberly noting that Hanamura cannot be saved. A sudden heavy presence shifts the air, leaving both men completely frozen in shock. A chilling laugh echoes as the dark silhouette of the villain looms in the distance. The tattered villain emerges from the smoke, clutching his golden horn with malicious intent. The companion panics as Gohei realizes the villain's true body escaped during the bright flash. The black-haired boy desperately urges his companions to run, realizing his own limbs are paralyzed. With a terrifying screech, the monstrous villain charges forward to tear his prey apart. Boom! A sleek blue motorcycle crashes directly into the villain's face, halting his assault. The mysterious woman stands tall as the motorcycle she hurled finishes its trajectory. The agile villain leaps backward, narrowly avoiding the debris of the shattered vehicle. The villain grunts in absolute shock as a sudden wave of energy hits him. Holding her glowing spear, Rindo calmly assesses the dying girl's brief state of cardiac arrest. As the black-haired boy watches in silence, Rindo readies her glowing spear to intervene. Healing energy surges into the wound, and Rindo smiles, declaring the sacrificed car worth it. Tearful and amazed, the black-haired boy whispers in deep relief at her timely arrival. When the boy calls her Rindo, she chides him, insisting on a different tale. A system window introduces Gold Lion-class soldier Rindo as she demands Fushimi call her Big Sis. Staring down the staggering villain, Rindo casually asks if he is the final enemy left. Grinning maliciously, the scarred villain raises his horn to summon reinforcements to his side. Observing the summoned shadow beasts, Rindo decides to heal the boy first to prevent further danger. Tapping her staff of ruin and restoration on his head, Rindo commands him to wake up. A brilliant surge of green energy washes over him as the life injection technique activates. Surging back to his feet fully healed, the boy leaves his companions staring in disbelief. Fushimi remarks on her overpowered healing, and Rindo smugly notes its borderline illegal effectiveness. Rindo asks about other survivors, and Fushimi replies that a dozen allies are hidden nearby. Fushimi explains that many injured allies are holed up nearby, which Rindo calmly acknowledges. Struck by her immense presence, Gohei asks if she needs backup against the incoming horde. Rindo scoffs at the mention of a large enemy force, declaring their numbers far too few. Charging into battle with Fushimi, Rindo boldly challenges anyone foolish enough to face him. Rindo fearlessly confronts the grotesque teddy bear minions as they leap forward to attack. Boom! A massive explosion of green energy erupts as Rindo obliterates the shadow monsters. Rindo disdains the grotesque stuffed toys, criticizing their terrible taste as they approach. Slicing the beasts, Rindo tells them to return only when they are stitched cute. Brandishing a red blade, Fushimi warns Rindo that the enemies are swarming in packs. Rindo declares she has stored enough energy to unleash her devastating life wave technique. A colossal pillar of green energy crashes down, obliterating the entire battlefield in an instant. The companion stands astounded by the blast, while Gohei wonders what in the world it is. Companion explains that Rindo's staff stores power to heal her, creating an infinite loop of destruction. The companion describes her as a unique frontline healer, though Gohei starts to question the term. Rindo strikes a cute, sparkling pose to mockingly defend her status as a gentle healer. Overwhelmed by her charm, the blushing companion gets a comical nosebleed and profusely apologizes. Fushimi charges ahead with his glowing crimson sword, focusing on the remaining shadow enemies. Rindo praises the boy, noting that his combat instincts remain incredibly sharp despite lower stats. Smiling warmly, Rindo tells Fushimi that she is proud of how much he has grown. Walking past her, the black-haired boy sighs that he has lost count of explaining this. Fushimi angrily yells back at her, firmly insisting that he is not her little brother. Rindo bursts into cheerful laughter, teasingly claiming that every little brother says exactly that. The scarred villain curses and panics, desperately shouting through his horn for more immediate reinforcements. Looking up calmly, Rindo observes that the chaotic red energy has finally begun to thrash wildly. Rindo commands Yugo to finish the battle as her glowing green staff hovers behind his shoulder. Yugo warily agrees, reminding her to keep the power levels moderate while her staff is identified. A central crystal of Rindo's personal armament glows with a blinding divine teal energy. Activating the life acceleration technique, Rindo propels Yugo forward as he charges with tremendous speed. The startled villain gasps in shock as Yugo suddenly leaps high above him in a flash of teal lightning. Despite the excessive boost, Yugo grins and unleashes his personal armament, the Crimson Shape of Pain. The terrified villain realizes the devastating crimson slash is coming down upon him, completely paralyzed with fear. Desperate to survive, the panicking villain reflexively moves his hands to shield his precious golden horn. Yugo coolly delivers his final strike, mockingly agreeing with the villain's futile attempts to protect himself. A tight grip on the glowing crimson sword channels the absolute weight of his condensed agony. The massive red blade tears through the villain's torso, shattering his defenses in a single sweep. Piercing the villain with absolute force, Yugo makes him feel the agonizing physical sensation of being impaled. The villain screams in agony as his golden horn shatters, realizing Yugo's arm movement was a trick. Yugo glares down, revealing that his initial high-profile attack was merely a calculated feint. The cold declaration echoes through the dark battlefield, confirming the final defeat of the monster Piper. Debris of the shattered golden horn scatters as Yugo vows to never let anyone be taken again. Reaching down amidst the floating ruins, Yugo firmly declares that he will protect his companions forever. The villain's monstrous physical form breaks apart and disintegrates into ash on the desolate battlefield. Grimacing in utter agony, the crumbling villain mutters his final words as he experiences true physical pain. Yugo stands silently in the rising smoke, staring down at the shattered remnants of his defeated enemy. The brown-haired companion and Gohei watch in absolute disbelief, stunned by the sudden conclusion of the battle. Rindo stands tall and composed, her sharp gaze sweeping across the quiet, red-hued ruins of the city. Hanamura lies peacefully on the dusty ground, her chest wound closed and her breathing finally stabilized. Clenching his fist, Yugo quietly reflects on whether the villain finally understood the crushing weight of agony. Suddenly, a massive shower of sparkling red sparks erupts around Yugo, heralding a system notification. A glowing system interface appears before the survivors, officially declaring their victory and preparing bonus rewards. Yugo observes the red holographic screen detailing his significant stat increases for surviving the trial. The system interface blinks with a rare notification announcing that Yugo's personal armament is about to evolve. The brown-haired companion gasps in wonder as his arm heals completely, while Gohei's stat bonuses display. Gohei's trusty sniper rifle glows with intense golden energy as it upgrades into the hunter's gun lance. Rindo praises the elderly sniper, impressed by the formidable high-tier weapon he has managed to unlock. Holding his giant high-tech weapon, the bewildered old-timer admits he has no idea how to use it. Yugo stares wide-eyed at the next system update, caught completely off guard by the final notifications. A magnificent ornate gold revolver floats above Hanamura as the system identifies her class as School of Heroes. The two men gasp in absolute shock upon witnessing the divine gold weapon manifested beside the unconscious girl. Spotting the golden light, Yugo desperately rushes back to check on Hanamura's condition. Rindo smiles gently at Yugo, softly noting that he has truly been blessed with wonderful comrades. The red sky begins to crack like fragile glass, signaling the imminent collapse of the pocket dimension. The false world shatters completely into countless glittering shards, revealing a clear blue sky beyond the ruin. Shielding their eyes, the two men stare in awe as the artificial boundary of their prison dissolves. A massive system banner appears across the clearing sky, officially declaring that the Demon Fall event is over. Cradling the sleeping Hanamura, Yugo gazes somberly as the system displays the devastating casualty count of 232. The vast sky clears completely, leaving only 48 survivors out of the hundreds who entered. Sitting amidst the concrete ruins, a dazed young man slowly opens his eyes as the barrier fades. A system profile confirms that the battered survivor Hikaru Hasakura has successfully made it out alive. Somewhere in the darkness, a defeated foe slams his fists in fury, screaming in absolute frustration. A towering monstrous silhouette mockingly praises the challenger, while the defeated villain screams that the survivors cheated. The villain throws a furious tantrum, claiming he would have won if Rindo hadn't intervened. Dorothy, the cat-masked girl, throws a massive tantrum and screams furiously at their defeat. A mysterious voice mocks Ricardo as a small, comical boiling cauldron suddenly manifests beside him. Dorothy commands the magical cauldron to simmer their defeated foe until he completely falls apart. Ricardo complains about being turned into broth while the masked figure silently agrees with him. The red-haired woman points out that the final blow should have counted as his loss. The speaker notes that the flute was supposed to remain targeted despite Rando's timely entrance. The speaker judges that throwing the flute to escape broke the fairness of the game. Dorothy tearfully accuses Tutu of being mean, while her companion tries to comfort her. The grinning clown praises the brilliant circus stage design and the ringmaster's spectacular giant form. The clown suggests praising the players for their intuition instead of sulking over the loss. Smiling widely, the clown expresses his great delight at seeing Yugo return to action. The clown turns to the gathered villains and asks if they all agree with them. The speaker commands the villains to gaze upon Yugo's gallant form once again. The hooded, one-eyed sage stares silently at the crystal reflection, completely mesmerized by Yugo. Ricardo notes the boss's rare display of emotion and eagerly requests to go next. Ricardo feels the pressure of the next match, but Dorothy loudly objects to his turn. Dorothy fiercely demands another turn, declaring that she will be the one going next. Ricardo complains about the unfairness, expressing his disappointment that he cannot face Yugo himself. The clown advises Ricardo to let Dorothy go first to allow himself more preparation time. Ricardo agrees to let Dorothy host, but only under one very specific condition. Glowing with 3 terrifying yellow eyes, Ricardo demands to be placed directly on the board. Pointing out their accumulated black marks, the speaker suggests they go incredibly big next time. A dark, empty screen transition carries the ominous promise of their inevitable return. A passing train's rhythmic clattering sound echoes through the clear blue sky above the quiet city. The soft, distant sound of the train clattering drifts through a peaceful hospital window. Inside the quiet hospital room, Hanamura slowly opens her brown eyes as she begins to wake up. Hanamura lies peacefully in her hospital bed, staring blankly up at the ceiling. Hanamura gasps in quiet surprise upon realizing someone is gently holding her hand. She softly calls out to Fushimi, who has fallen asleep while holding her hand. Fushimi slowly blinks his tired eyes, groggily waking up beside her bed. Fushimi shouts her name in immense relief, startled to see Hanamura finally awake. Fushimi frantically asks if she is hurting, but Rindo proudly boasts about her flawless treatment. Rindo enters the room announcing Hanamura's early discharge and suggesting a celebration. Smiling warmly, Rindo congratulates the young heroine on successfully surviving her dangerous ordeal. Fushimi worries about necessary medical tests, but Rindo prioritizes sleeping in a proper bed. Rindo playfully ruffles Fushimi's hair, teasing him about wanting more big sisterly affection. An atmospheric transition screen declares that a grand feast must always follow a tough battle. The next day, the joyful survivors gather around a sizzling grill to feast together. The companions converse about recruitment prospects while enjoying their delicious barbecue feast. They joke about Rindo's recruitment tactics, causing Hanamura to wonder if Rindo likes her. Hikaru Hasakura sits silently at the table, looking incredibly grumpy and annoyed. Rindo startles Hakura by draping her arm over him and thanking him for his help. Rindo downs her drink while praising Hakura for putting his neck on the line. Rindo slams her fist down on the table, declaring she has seriously revised her opinion of him. Rindo teasingly tells Hakura that he should have spoken up about his capabilities sooner. Hakura sheepishly corrects her, explaining that Fushimi was the one who motivated him. Hakura asks Rindo to tell Fushimi not to make others remember foolish things. Rindo gently advises him to cherish those memories as long as they remain with him. Rindo reassuringly tells Hakura that there is absolutely nothing foolish about him. A final system interface confirms his full heroic identity as Mitsutaro Hakura. Hakura grimaces with deep frustration, muttering a quiet curse to himself. Under the crescent moon, Rindo addresses the gathered survivors, thanking them for their presence. Rindo confidently offers the survivors a chance to join the military despite the extreme risks. The brown-haired companion joyfully shows off Rindo's autograph while Hakura walks away grumpily. Hanamura asks Gohei about his plans now that the battle is over. Gohei explains how remarkably well he feels since his stats were upgraded. Gohei admires his newly evolved weapon, expressing his desire to keep using it. Gohei bids farewell to Yugo and Hanamura, suggesting they meet again on future hunting grounds. Gohei warns Yugo to stay alive until their next meeting, leaving Yugo thoughtful. Yugo somberly tells Hanamura that running from the demon fall wouldn't have saved them. Yugo clenches his fist, declaring his resolve to end this terrible nightmare. Hanamura gasps in shock as Yugo calmly announces his decision to resign tomorrow. Yugo apologizes to Hanamura for any complications his sudden departure might cause. Yugo bids Hanamura farewell and walks down the quiet city street. Hanamura desperately calls out to Yugo, urging him to wait. At a dimly lit bar, Rindo orders a strong bottle of alcohol in a tumbler. Hanamura sweats nervously, wondering how to order at a bar without a menu. Rindo takes charge and orders a grasshopper cocktail for her young companion. Rindo takes a sip of her drink, thoroughly enjoying the taste. Hanamura happily drinks her sweet cocktail while the bartender pours Rindo a strong drink. Rindo chugs her high-alcohol beverage in one go, completely shocking Hanamura. Rindo slams her glass down with a satisfied sigh, startling Hanamura. Rindo asks Hanamura for her thoughts on watching Yugo fade. Hanamura remains silent, staring thoughtfully as more alcohol is poured. Memories of Yugo's exceptionally calm yet painful combat style flash before them. Rindo describes Yugo's combat style as the physical manifestation of his inner pain. Rindo explains that Yugo obtained a special ability during his first nightmare. Hanamura looks up in surprise, questioning the timing of Yugo's awakening. Rindo asks to smoke while explaining the grueling nature of large-scale demon falls. A memory of a young, blood-covered Yugo clutching a knife illustrates his early survival. Rindo explains how Yugo's survival skills were passed down from his outdoorsy father. Rindo reveals her old Girl Scout rules influenced her habit of protecting younger allies. Rindo grows serious, indicating there is a deeper reason behind her actions. A memory shows Rindo hugging the young, traumatized Yugo to become his forced family. Rindo somberly remarks that no one can survive in this world completely alone. Rindo reflects on how easily a person can lose their will to live. Rindo warns that losing hope is absolutely fatal inside a demon fall. Rindo asks Hanamura if she understands the weight of that reality. Rindo apologizes for prying into Hanamura's painful family circumstances. A flashback shows a young Hanamura visiting her father's hospital room. Rindo mentions how Hanamura had to quit school to pay the medical bills. Rindo stubs out her cigarette, preparing to make a direct request. Rindo directly asks Hanamura to stay by Yugo's side. Rindo admits she can no longer protect Yugo due to her high position. Rindo explains the heavy burden and constant danger of her Gold Lion class duties. A flashback shows Gohei politely declining Rindo's offer to protect him. Rindo looks at Hanamura, hoping she will accept the task. Suddenly, Hanamura reaches across the counter and grabs Rindo's glass. Hanamura downs Rindo's strong drink in one massive gulp, shocking Rindo. Slamming the glass down, Hanamura loudly rejects Rinto's attempts to bribe or manipulate her. Hanamura passionately declares her refusal to stand by uselessly because she deeply cares. Hanamura vents her anger at Yugo's dismissive farewell, questioning his attempt at a clean break. She angrily wonders if Yugo still considers her dead weight instead of a true comrade. Tearfully, Hanamura wishes Yugo would simply admit his vulnerability and ask her to stay. A sudden hush falls over the dim bar as Hanamura slumps down in emotional exhaustion. Realizing her outburst, Hanamura sheepishly confesses that she is a very emotional drunk. Hanamura demands that Rindo take responsibility for inviting her and stay until the bitter end. Smiling warmly, Rindo silently raises her golden cup to accept the young girl's challenge. Rindo signals the bartender for another bottle to continue their long night of drinking. The two women enthusiastically toast to drinking together until the break of dawn. 5 days pass, shifting the journey to the city of Nagoya under a cloudy sky. Streetlights illuminate a green highway sign pointing the way to their next destination. Hanamura notes they have arrived directly in the predicted outbreak zone of Nagoya. Hanamura drives a motorcycle with Yugo riding passenger as they head into the city. Yugo is stunned to learn Hanamura has a license to ride mid-sized motorcycles. Hanamura explains that the rugged motorcycle was a very practical gift from Rindo. Bringing the motorcycle to a halt, they decide to form a plan to strengthen themselves. They acknowledge that their abilities can only grow through combat inside a demon fall. Yugo suggests they first focus on getting fully accustomed to using their weapons. Hanamura excitedly prepares to train with her specialized weapon, the hero's handgun. Yugo explains that large cities possess dedicated facilities where soldiers can train. He reminds her that their official soldier status grants them free access to these facilities. Hanamura agrees with the logic as they finally arrive at their destination. They stand before the Nagoya Guild, which features a remarkably grand and traditional design. Yugo advises keeping a low profile since rookie White Rabbit soldiers often face harassment. Walking into the guild lobby, they immediately spot a group of loitering soldiers. Hanamura's aggressive solution to potential troublemakers only confirms Yugo's worries. The local soldiers mockingly label the newcomers as flashy, out-of-town greenhorns. The thugs continue their taunting by questioning if the two rookies are a couple. A menacing muscular guild member steps forward to intervene in the confrontation. The large man easily crushes a metal hand gripper to intimidate the rookies. Glowing with hostile red eyes, the man promises to teach the newcomers their limits. The receptionist processes their documents, noting they're both brand new White Rabbit rookies. The receptionist is shocked to read that Yugo has already survived 2 demon falls. The receptionist skeptically questions the accuracy of their highly impressive survival records. Guild staff gasp in disbelief upon discovering a personal recommendation from Rindo. Yugo feels the weight of the sudden attention as the staff stare at him. The staff realize with shock that Yugo was one of the legendary first survivors. The flustered receptionist quickly apologizes and hands over their official guild membership cards. She explains that lodging and training are free, with paid upgrades also available. Hanamura is dismayed to learn that free lodging requires sharing dorms with strangers. Hanamura playfully suggests sharing a twin room, but Yugo immediately shuts her down. Slightly stung by his rapid rejection, Hanamura agrees to book separate private rooms. Yugo insists they prioritize training immediately so they do not carry fatigue into tomorrow. The receptionist directs them toward the facility for their mandatory first-time training session. Hanamura stands ready in a sterile simulation room for her individual power assessment. The system instructs Hanamura to use her personal armament to ensure highly accurate data. The simulation activates, commanding her to defeat any enemy projection that appears. 3 blue armed holographic pseudo-enemies materialize and begin their advance. The system warns Hanamura that virtual hits will affect her evaluation score. Hanamura eagerly asks about rank promotions, but the system informs her that this evaluation only provides reference data. The system warns that the virtual enemy's non-lethal stun weapons are specifically calibrated to inflict realistic pain. Hanamura nervously questions the severity of the simulated pain, learning it causes some candidates to quit entirely. Resolved to face the trial, Hanamura readies her gun as the virtual enemies launch their assault. Observers inside the guild control room note that Hanamura's training simulation has officially begun. The onlookers analyze her mid-range weapon, choosing to keep watching her assessment out of curiosity. With focused determination, Hanamura fires her specialized gold handgun at the oncoming targets. Her precise consecutive shots instantly strike the vital head areas of all 3 virtual opponents. The observing soldiers express genuine surprise at her impressive ability to land multiple headshots. The gold-toothed guild examiner grudgingly acknowledges her decent marksmanship skills with a smirk. A massive, heavily armored holographic monster materializes, posing a threat too durable for normal firearms. Hanamura quickly fires another direct shot to test the hulking monster's defenses. Her bullet collides with the creature's face, failing to pierce its armored shell. Hanamura is dismayed to see the giant opponent completely unfazed by her direct hits. System notification alerts her that her weapon has insufficient power to damage the target. The system advises her to adapt by aiming for vital points, forcing a tense Hanamura to regain her composure. Hanamura reminds herself that her firearm is a specialized personal armament rather than a standard weapon. Recalling Yugo's natural combat instincts, she feels her own latent understanding of her weapon awaken. Brimming with newfound confidence, Hanamura loudly declares her absolute resolve to succeed. She dashes forward with remarkable speed, closing the distance to her massive holographic target. Refusing to stay at a safe distance, she boldly charges directly into the monster's path. The watching soldiers gasp in utter disbelief as the gun-wielding rookie rushes into close-range combat. Evading a devastating swipe, she reflects on what she learned from watching Yugo's combat style. She recognizes that true combat strength cannot be achieved without taking immense risks. Pressing her gun against the beast, Hanamura fires a point-blank shot, fully accepting the danger. The gold-toothed examiner is thoroughly entertained by her bold and reckless tactical decision. Having successfully executed a point-blank burst, a suit-faced Hanamura winces at the painful recoil. The muscular examiner loudly declares his immense approval of her gutsy combat style. 20 minutes later, the defeated holographic monster finally dissolves on the simulation chamber floor. A system announcement commends Hanamura for successfully completing her grueling combat assessment. Exhausted and disheveled, she receives her final evaluation, praising her score but noting her high damage intake. Despite warnings that her reckless style would be fatal in real combat, Hanamura cheerfully defends practicing risky moves during training. The chamber doors slide open as the examiner mischievously offers her an even greater challenge. Stepping out, a startled Hanamura comes face-to-face with a group of loitering veteran soldiers. The smug group of soldiers arrogantly proposes an immediate joint training match to test her limits. The veteran soldiers mockingly commend her bravery while surrounding her in the hallway. The examiner speaks through the intercom, suggesting a high-stakes wager to make the match more interesting. The veterans challenge her to defeat at least one of them in consecutive matches. Hanamura's eyes instantly light up with excitement upon hearing there's a massive cash prize per victory. She yells out in absolute shock and pure delight at the incredibly generous reward. The examiner clarifies the stakes, warning that her defeat means she must become one of his underlings. The lead soldier smugly promises to whip her into shape so she can survive future battles. A sudden, violent tremor shakes the entire guild hall, terrifying the arrogant soldiers. The massive shockwave catches the gold-toothed examiner off guard as the room violently vibrates. The intense shaking continues to rattle the control room, completely interrupting the wager. Looking around in confusion, Hanamura quickly realizes the tremor is not a natural earthquake. A terrified guild researcher lies sprawled on the ground as a dark figure calmly steps into the room. Yugo sheepishly emerges from his training chamber, apologizing for getting carried away and causing the massive shockwave. Hanamura gasps in surprise while the bewildered Yugo notices her and questions the crowd of soldiers gathered around. The flustered guild researcher stammers nervously, completely unable to explain the absurd situation. Yugo and Hanamura stand in stunned silence as they face the guild members. Yugo remains completely calm and silent, staring forward with a highly composed expression. The gold-toothed examiner agrees to a high-stakes bet involving money and headhunting. Hanamura is caught completely off guard as Yugo suddenly asks to join the match. Yugo firmly requests to participate in the wager alongside his rookie partner. Yugo insists on joining the battle to back up Hanamura in the training match. The examiner agrees to let Yugo join, amused by the rookie's boldness. Yugo suggests fighting all the veteran soldiers at once to save time. The veteran soldiers are stunned as the match becomes a 5 versus 2 brawl. The annoyed veterans prepare their weapons, eager to put the arrogant rookies in their place. A system announcement informs them that non-lethal simulated weapons are being generated. The simulation system confirms that the practice weapons will realistically replicate original performance. The system displays their simulated armaments and instructs Yugo and Hanamura to equip them. Hanamura understands the necessity of using non-lethal weapons for safety during human training. Yugo commends the guild's thoroughness as they hold the realistic training weapons. Holding his training blade, Yugo coolly tells the veterans to attack whenever they are ready. Veterans smirk confidently, fully expecting to easily overpower the cocky rookie. The match begins as the veterans launch a coordinated assault against the two rookies. Yugo remains completely calm, closely tracking his opponent's movements as they close the distance. Yugo notes that 3 members of the Black Eagles faction are attacking them together. The veteran is suddenly sent crashing to the ground, utterly bewildered by Yugo's speed. The startled veteran gasps in terror as Yugo's training blade narrowly misses him. Yugo scolds the veterans for targeting his partner without showing any proper respect. Hanamura fires a precise shot, effortlessly disarming a veteran as he recoils in shock. Hanamura cheerfully shoots at her opponents while playfully claiming the situation is embarrassing. The defeated veterans realize with horror that the rookies are far from ordinary rookies. The examiner sweatily concludes that his men stand absolutely no chance against Yugo. The examiner tosses a massive stack of cash to settle his lost wager. The examiner demands that the full 500,000 cash prize be handed over. The examiner is described as a big-hearted man who gets along well with Rindo. While enjoying their hot udon, Hanamura thanks the server and resumes her discussion. Hanamura observes the unusually large crowd of fellow soldiers gathering inside the restaurant. Yugo explains that civilians are fleeing the predicted outbreak zones while soldiers gather instead. They agree that the limited number of open establishments naturally concentrates the soldiers. Yugo skeptically warns that a soldier's physical presence does not guarantee combat cooperation. An illustration depicts how cowardly soldiers lazily farm experience points by avoiding tough battles. While walking outside, Yugo's attention is captured by his ringing cell phone. Yugo answers an urgent incoming phone call from their high-ranking commanding officer, Rindo. Rindo warns Yugo that certain dangerous entities are highly likely to appear. She strictly orders Yugo to avoid direct confrontation and wait for reinforcements instead. Yugo playfully highlights her uncharacteristic concern before seriously agreeing to follow her orders. Under a sinister crimson glow, Yugo and Hanamura suddenly stop in absolute shock. A mysterious blonde girl suddenly appears and cheerfully greets the two rookie soldiers. The young girl politely asks the stunned rookies for their immediate assistance. Yugo is instantly overwhelmed by the terrifying and oppressive atmosphere surrounding the girl. Yugo realizes this chilling dread is identical to what he experienced before. The girl's eyes glow with a menacing blue light as her demeanor shifts completely. Grinning wickedly, Alice declares that everyone is now in absolute terrible trouble. While Hanamura is disarmed by her cute appearance, Yugo warns her she is dangerous. A system notification triggers, commanding them to safely escort Alice to the Queen. Holding a specialized communicator, Yugo establishes a secure connection within the isolated battlefield zone. Fushimi confirms his entry into the area via radio, noting a strange girl nearby who objects to his rude description. Yugo realizes each entering group is accompanied by their own mysterious version of Alice. Fushimi defends his knowledge of classic fairy tales after a subordinate teases him about the fame. A digital map indicates they are separated on opposite sides of the massive barrier dome. Akari prepares her flare gun, acknowledging that both teams must survive their separate paths. Fushimi agrees that remaining separated is a smart tactical choice to avoid scaling up the challenge. Fushimi informs Yugo that elite veterans named Aimaru and Sago are also inside. Yugo reacts with focused intensity upon hearing the names of the powerful survivors. Fushimi explains that Aimaru entered from the north while the solitary Sago remains unaccounted for. Yugo remembers meeting Sago before and resolves to search for him if opportunity arises. Fushimi abruptly ends the radio call as hostile entities suddenly begin approaching his position. A crucial warning reminds them that survival must remain their absolute top priority. A sudden burst of static cuts off their communication as the environment shifts around them. Hostile card soldiers armed with spears surround the group, triggering an immediate battle alarm. Yugo commands a westward retreat, preparing his magic to clear a path while shielding Alice. With a powerful sweeping strike, Yugo forcefully bludgeons an oncoming card soldier. The impact sends another armored guard crashing backward onto the cobblestone street. Surprised by his enhanced strength, Yugo charges ahead to clear a path while instructing Akari to defend. Akari cheerfully readies her specialized personal armament handgun to cover their retreat. Akari's rapid-fire shots detonate against the card soldiers, blasting them backwards with explosive force. Traces of defeated magical opponents scatter with explosive force across the crimson-tinted hallway. A heavily armored elite card knight wielding a massive battle axe charges directly toward them. Akari swiftly slides underneath the executioner's sweeping strike, narrowly evading the deadly blade. Pressed against the beast, Akari unleashes a devastating point-blank burst shot to neutralize her opponent. Alice joyfully applauds their bravery, prompting an annoyed Yugo to ask for actual directions. Yugo freezes in sudden realization as a dangerous, foreboding presence looms directly ahead. They spot the Heart Queen's massive Gothic castle looming menacingly over the city ruins. With their destination in sight, Yugo and Alice sprint forward without hesitation. A sudden misstep sends their feet sliding off the edge of a crumbling precipice. The street collapses beneath them, plunging the entire group down a massive cavernous pit. Falling rapidly, Akari screams in panic while Alice remains perfectly calm and amused. A cryptic prompt advises them to roll with the momentum of their descent. Yugo reassures the panicking Akari that falling down a rabbit hole is normal in this fairy tale. Yugo realizes they must act mid-fall just as Akari is comically struck by a falling jar. Dozens of glowing glass jars begin raining down alongside them within the dark abyss. Alice poses a sudden, strange question to the rookies about the falling jar's contents. Alice asks them what topping they prefer to spread on their morning toast. Alice muses about delicious fruit jams before hinting at her ultimate personal preference. Studying the descending jars, Yugo carefully points out a specific red container to choose. Yugo lunges forward to grab a glowing empty jar descending through the darkness. With precise timing, Yugo successfully snatches the falling empty glass jar midair. Yugo declares his correct choice of orange marmalade, triggering a brilliant golden magical reaction. A massive geyser of orange jam cushions their fall as they safely splash down. Drenched in sweet marmalade, they realize answering correctly saved them from a lethal impact. Yugo explains how this trap directly references Alice grabbing an empty marmalade jar during her fall. Alice cheerfully celebrates their survival, making a dark joke that thoroughly unnerves Akari. Alice urges the dazed rookies to quickly resume their chase without taking a rest. A red-eyed white rabbit wearing a vest suddenly appears in the spotlight ahead. Yugo and Akari immediately recognize the iconic white rabbit, leading them deeper into the maze. Running footsteps echo as Yugo and Akari chase the white rabbit toward a brilliant light. Passing through a wooden doorway, Yugo and Akari suddenly halt as they take in their surroundings. Staring at a black and white tiled room filled with doors, Akari wonders what this bizarre place is. Akari points out the impossible doors and notes that the white rabbit has completely disappeared. Alice suddenly pops up behind a table, holding a mysterious purple bottle for the pair. Grinning cheerfully, Alice holds out the dark potion and instructs them to drink it all at once. Staring at the ominous skull and crossbones label, the sweat-dropped rookies ask if she's actually being serious. Alice's eyes glow with a menacing blue light as she confirms her dangerous demand. The pair ask for clarification, and Alice confirms that one of them must drink the liquid. Akari expresses her deep suspicion, but Yugo calmly guesses the suspicious potion will not be lethal. Yugo explains this is likely a shrinking potion based on the fairy tale, much to Akari's surprise. Yugo points out a chain door, explaining they must find a key hidden behind other doors. Akari notes that many of the doors are currently far too small for them to enter. Yugo reasons that the physical shrinkage is likely temporary, so they must simply accept it. Akira suggests sharing the potion, but Alice angrily insists that it only works for one person. Yugo tries to suggest exploring normal-sized doors, but Alice loudly warns they are wasting precious time. Alice gasps in pure shock as the bottle is suddenly snatched right out of her hands. A sudden gulp echoes as Akari downs the entire purple bottle, leaving Yugo utterly stunned. Now tiny, Akari smiles and explains that as partners they must divide the risks equally. Yugo stares down at his brave miniature partner, deeply moved by her selflessness. A loud click sounds as both partners turn their respective door handles to progress separately. Stepping through his door, Yugo reasons that most of the doors are likely just visual distractions. Yugo continues down the dark corridor, figuring there are only two real paths available. Yugo gasps as he realizes the system requires them to tackle both paths simultaneously. Hostile card soldiers emerge from the darkness, prompting Yugo to prepare for an inevitable fight. A sharp hum echoes as red magic flares in Yugo's hand, hoping Akari stays safe. Navigating a dark stone tunnel with her pistol raised, Akari searches for the hidden key. Akari spots a massive locked padlock, suddenly questioning the puzzle's true layout. Akari hides behind a stone wall as a faint rustle sounds from the darkness ahead. She is startled to find a group of human-sized insects playing cards around a table. The well-dressed praying mantis suddenly stops its game, turning its cold gaze directly toward her. Akari freezes in absolute terror as she realizes she has been completely spotted by them. With a loud rustle of wings, the giant insects rise from their table to attack. Akari groans in disgust as the card game is abandoned for a sudden chase. A loud buzzing fills the air as Akari sprints away from the swarming giant insects. Akari panics at the massive mantis before remembering she is the one who is shrunk. Screaming in horror, Akari dodges several massive spiders dropping down on webs from the ceiling. A rapid scuttling sounds as Akari spots a vile bug that is normally pixelated on television. Loud bangs ring out as Akari furiously fires her pistol to blast the approaching creatures. A loud boom echoes as Akari nimbly slides past the burning remains of her foes. Unleashing a devastating point-blank burst shot, Akari screams that she is completely terrified of this stage. Despite her explosive attacks, the charred insect trio continues chasing her relentlessly down the tunnel. Meanwhile, Yugo runs his hand along a brick wall, searching for a hidden mechanism. Yugo gasps as his fingers slip into a narrow breach hidden within the brick wall. Yugo shouts through the breach, hearing Akari's voice as she sprints, carrying a massive golden key. Looking through the narrow wall opening, Yugo informs his partner that his path is blocked. Lugging the heavy golden key, Akari frantically warns him about the terrifying insect swarm behind her. Yugo checks her path's layout, telling her to lie flat on a signal. Stealing his resolve, Yugo screams for Akari to drop as he readies his attack. A colossal explosion roars as Yugo fires a devastating red laser beam directly over her head. Yugo warns Akari that more insects are crawling on the walls as she runs with the key. Yugo instructs Akari to touch the red energy spear above her, which she nervously prepares to do. A sharp tap echoes as Akari touches the spear, allowing Yugo to lock onto his target. Yugo channels his magic, activating his pain shape modification skill to reach deep down the dark tunnel. Yugo channels the painful sensation of thorn stabs to manifest a devastating magical strike for Akari. A barrage of glowing red spikes erupts across the tunnel, thoroughly skewering the giant insect swarm. Staring at the massive red barrier, Akari wonders if the terrifying insect swarm has been cleared. The miniature Akari rests safely on Yugo's hand after surviving her harrowing run down the tunnel. Returning to her normal size, Akari announces her arrival while the dodo bird enthusiastically welcomes her back. Alice claps her hands in delight, celebrating Akari's success in retrieving the giant golden key. Alice asks Akari about her experience being tiny, which the traumatized girl describes as cosmic punishment. With a heavy metallic click, they insert the golden key to unlock the chain door. The group cautiously steps through the newly unlocked threshold, enveloped in a brilliant golden light. A loud slam draws their attention as they arrive in a dark forest filled with giant mushrooms. An angry, bearded, beast-like man wearing a top hat demands cooperation due to their tight schedule. The lazy gray dormouse sighs in agreement, expressing his deep irritation with the current situation. The trembling white rabbit desperately pleads for the bickering Tea Party hosts to calm down. Yugo gasps as he spots several helpless human survivors suspended in heavy chains from the trees. The Tea Party hosts cease their bickering to glare suspiciously at the newly arrived intruders. The menacing Hatter wonders aloud if the newcomers are the latest prisoners to be captured. They continue to eye the group suspiciously, debating whether to take them as fresh prisoners. Akari prepares for a fight, while Yugo notes they might be quest characters or hostile enemies. The frustrated Hatter angrily orders the silent gray mouse to say something to break the tension. The Hatter peers into the ceramic jar, expressing confusion as he notices it is empty. The Hatter curses furiously upon discovering they've completely run out of sugar for their tea. Yugo gasps in sudden realization as a clever solution to their problem flashes in his mind. Yugo quickly reaches into his pocket, offering a sweet treat to diffuse the Hatter's explosive rage. The host mouse freeze in surprise at the sudden peaceful offering from Yugo. A system notification confirms Yugo retrieved a sweet bag of sugar candy to present to them. Hostile monsters eat the candies, instantly melting into pure blissful delight from the sweetness. Akari realizes stress requires sweet treats, prompting Alice to cheerfully praise their clever, quick thinking. Yugo sits down at the table and calmly asks the Hatter what has caused their severe distress. The Hatter explains their anxiety is due to falling short of the required number of prisoners. The Hatter reveals they are forced to capture 36 more people by the end of today. Yugo deduces the prisoners are for the execution-loving queen, asking why these people are being targeted. The Hatter explains that the captives bear a glowing purple failure brand as proof they failed. Yugo is deeply unsettled by the cruel system targeting those who fail or refuse the trials. The Hatter remains silent for a tense moment, staring back with a solemn and heavy expression. The Hatter defends their actions as survival, prompting an enraged Alice to blast them for their cowardice. Alice demands the Queen's location to lodge a complaint, confirming to Yugo they found the right path. The terrified hosts warn Alice that she completely underestimates the sheer, bloodthirsty terror of the Queen. Alice rallies the group to rise up, while Akari eagerly supports her passionate call to action. The Hatter's expression darkens as he challenges them to prove their big talk with action. Snapping his fingers, the Hatter summons dark purple magic to initiate their trial. Small, aggressive mushroom monsters erupt from the purple mist and leap forward to attack. Staring at the mushroom creatures, the hungry Akari comically notes that they actually look delicious. Akari screams in panic as a menacing sharp-toothed red apple suddenly appears on Yugo's head. The Hatter declares that they must successfully clear the dangerous trial of apples and mushrooms to progress. The Hatter explains the rules, commanding the dark-haired Yugo to wipe out all the mushroom monsters. The Hatter warns Yugo that the apple on his head will detonate unless someone else attacks it. Akari looks utterly terrified as she and Yugo react in shock to the threat of an explosion. Akari frantically asks Yugo for a plan as he readies his glowing red magical energy, placing his trust in her. Several mushroom monsters leap aggressively across the grassy field, prompting Yugo to encourage Akari to target them. Yugo unleashes a rapid series of red sword slashes, cleanly slicing through the incoming mushroom creatures. The system announces Yugo's activation of his personal armament Shape of Pain modification skill, triggering its transformation. Akari aims her golden handgun at the apple on Yugo's head, caught off guard by the trial's absurd rules. Yugo stands beneath an imposing giant red mushroom that towers over the dark landscape. A deep rumble shakes the ground as the colossal red mushroom begins to shift and grow. Yugo looks back in sharp surprise as he senses a sudden change in his massive opponent. Debris and smoke explode from the ground as Yugo runs frantically to avoid the sudden shockwaves. The Hatter cryptically warns a confused Akari that things are not always as they seem. Yugo gazes up in horror as the giant mushroom morphs into a massive, multi-tentacled beast. Yugo assures Akari he can handle the situation, instructing her to prepare for her next shot. Yugo leaps through the air using his red blade to slash at the massive, writhing tentacles. Dodging the relentless attacks, Yugo realizes the rapid tentacles prevent him from raising his defensive shield. The menacing red apple on Yugo's head gleefully announces that only 10 seconds remain. Akari frantically urges Yugo to raise his shield as she aims her handgun at the moving target. Akari struggles to aim, realizing a precise shot is extremely difficult with the target moving rapidly. Unable to use his shield, Yugo prepares a magic attack to stop the beast, telling Akari to shoot. Stealing her nerves, Akari concentrates on her target and prepares to pull the trigger. A massive red magical explosion erupts as Yugo channels the painful shockwave to strike the monster. Akari watches the explosive magical clash in stunned silence, her eyes wide with concern. Through a circular scope, Yugo is shown momentarily distracted during the intense battle. Akari aims as the countdown reaches 2, prompting Yugo to scream her name in panic. The grinning apple on Yugo's head mockingly marks the final second of the countdown. A sudden resonant bang echoes through the forest as a shot is fired. The smoke clears slightly as the scene shifts, showing the immediate aftermath of the gunshot. A powerful golden laser beam pierces the air, blowing the apple right off Yugo's head. Kneeling on the grass, a bewildered Yugo looks around to see what destroyed the apple. A smug man with grayish-green hair and a white turtleneck mocks them for their rookie struggles. The mysterious man steps forward, reassuring them that they no longer need to worry. An armored knight wielding a giant bazooka appears behind him, declaring the big brother has arrived. Alice happily hugs a newly arrived savior, celebrating a dramatic entrance to rescue them. A golden system message identifies the smug newcomer as Karame Aimaru, a gold lion-class survivor. Akari kneels on the grass, letting out a heavy sigh of relief as the danger subsides. Yugo stands near the charred remains, while Alice angrily demands to know the meaning of this intrusion. Alice furiously protests Karame's interference, shouting that he is ruining her story and stealing her lead role. Alice coyly dismisses her own complaints with a playful grin, stating she does not care. Karame smiles serenely, urging the Hatter to quickly decide if they passed or failed the trial. Karame questions the Hatter about the rules, pointing out there were no restrictions on receiving assistance. Karame begins channeling a menacing purple magical energy in his hand, stating either decision suits him. Karame brandishes a glowing purple spear, coldly threatening to execute them if they fail the trial. Terrified by Karame's immense pressure, the Hatter and Dormouse frantically declare them completely safe. Karame turns back to Alice, apologizing with a gentle smile as he explains his intervention. Karame explains he couldn't stand by while his juniors looked like they were about to die. Akari looks down in silence, sweating slightly as she absorbs Karame's blunt words. Yugo thanks Soldier Aimaru for his assistance as the hostile mushroom monsters completely vanish. Karame shakes Yugo's hand, while Yugo expresses his gratitude and wonders how Karame knows of him. Karame explains that he naturally paid attention to the first survivor to return after 8 years. Karame observes Yugo closely, pointing out that Yugo's instincts have not yet fully returned. Karame outstretches his hand with a serene smile, offering protection and inviting them to join him. Yugo stares in tense silence as a heavy thud sounds, contemplating the sudden invitation. Yugo acknowledges Karame's unusual magnetic presence but politely declines his offer to team up. Yugo explains that since they are only halfway, the elite survivor is better off going solo. Karame smiles warmly and pats the blonde Alice on her shoulder, telling them not to worry. Karame praises Alice as she steps forward, summoning a glowing golden door to their destination. Karame confesses he has already broken the rules, leaving Yugo startled by his unpredictable nature. Karame bids them a cheerful farewell, advising them to survive as they step through the portal. A sudden sharp clack sounds as the golden light fades, leaving Yugo and Akari behind. Akari sighs in relief that the threat withdrew, asking Yugo about the mysterious man's true identity. Yugo identifies Karame as a famous gold lion with taming powers, which deeply shocks Akari. Yugo explains Karame accumulates a massive army of monsters, carrying them over from past trials. Akari calls the skill overpowered, but Yugo warns her about the dark rumors surrounding Karame. Yugo reveals that Karame's taming power is actually a sinister form of brainwashing that twists minds. Yugo grows suspicious of Karame's true motives and advises keeping their distance from him. The bearded Hatter suddenly appears, agreeing to guide them to the castle after freeing the prisoners. The Hatter reluctantly agrees to guide them to the Queen's castle despite his obvious fear. A loud, echoing metallic clatter rings out as the heavy chains break and the captives drop safely. A sudden system notification startles them, announcing that bonus rewards are being distributed to survivors. Yugo reviews his substantial stat increases on the holographic screen, realizing the real battle begins now. Akari observes her massive stat boosts while keeping her focus locked on the challenges ahead. Akari is stunned as a glowing notification reveals her personal armament is beginning to evolve. Yugo reassures Akari that new armaments grow quickly, bolstering her confidence for the next battle. Yugo sincerely apologizes to Akari for putting too much pressure on her during the previous trial. A wave of emotion washes over Akari as her eyes well up with tears at his kind words. Akari hastily wipes her tears and promises she will be fully prepared for the next trial. Akari runs forward with a bright, determined smile, declaring she will successfully shoot her targets next time. The group sprints across a vast field under a blood-red sky, pursuing the quest to deliver Alice. They catch sight of the massive Gothic castle looming directly ahead, confirming their final destination. Akari asks about the other teams, but Yugo notes their communications are down due to trial conditions. Yugo explains that Karame went off-route to gather more survivors using his mind-controlled Alice. They stop as a massive barricade of red-card soldiers blocks the castle entrance. A creepy, disembodied grin floats in the dark void as a mocking giggle echoes. A sudden, sharp rustle alerts Yugo, prompting him to look down in deep suspicion. Yugo alerts Akari to the faint, eerie laughter echoing nearby, trying to pinpoint its source. Yugo runs toward the stone wall, realizing the laughter belongs to a grinning creature. Yugo explains the Alice in Wonderland lore, deducing they must follow the disembodied sound. Akari rallies the remaining survivors to follow the guidance of the mysterious voice. They peer down into a stone well, shocked to spot a giant striped cat grinning at them. The massive Cheshire cat smiles widely with glowing eyes, wearing a neat collar and tie. Yugo recognizes the Cheshire cat as a guide and decides to follow its lead. They discover a ruined breach in the wall, which Yugo believes will serve as a shortcut. Yugo notes that this specific trial was designed by Dorothy, hinting at a dangerous mastermind. Yugo leads them through the breach, knowing the designer is meticulously detailed with her trials. Sharp click sounds as a pair of elegant red high heels steps onto the stone floor. Peeking through a gap in the red curtains, Yugo and Akari overhear a disgruntled voice. A sharp glint flashes on a bloody guillotine, surrounded by faceless statues prepared for an execution. The Heartless Queen appears dramatically, identified by the system as their ultimate designated enemy. The Queen rages to her card soldiers about the severe lack of prisoners for her execution. Yugo and Akari look on grimly, confirming the Queen is indeed the main boss of the trial. Yugo and Akari peek through the red curtains, realizing they must face another event before fighting the Queen. A prompt decision is made to remain hidden and closely observe the unfolding events. A sudden soft rustling sound echoes as a foot elegantly steps onto the wooden floor. Alice steps forward with her dodo companion, boldly accusing the towering Queen of causing widespread suffering. The Heartless Queen turns her gaze in quiet irritation, reacting to the sudden, bold confrontation. Akari panics at Alice's sudden outburst, while Yugo seriously warns her to prepare for a forced event. The furious Queen demands her stuttering captain explain how the intruders managed to slip past her defenses. Glaring coldly at her failing captain, the Heartless Queen flatly declares his incompetence to be a total disgrace. The captain gasps in terror as the Queen's pointing finger commands her card soldiers to seize him. The menacing Iron Maiden opens wide as the Queen coldly sentences the captain to pay with his life. A heavy metallic slam echoes through the room as the Iron Maiden closes, executing the captain. A gruesome splatter of blood erupts across the room, leaving Yugo and Akari completely speechless. Wiping blood onto her elegant gold fan, the sinister Queen mockingly commends the remaining intruders. Alice retorts in sheer disgust, expressing her deep exhaustion with the Queen's constant talk of executions. Alice questions if the sovereign has any other duties, prompting a condescending chuckle from the Queen. The Queen sadistically explains that she executes her people because living beings are most beautiful when dying. Hiding her malicious smile behind her fan, she declares that fleeing execution is a grave crime. A glowing purple barrier materializes as the Queen unexpectedly proposes holding a trial to judge her crimes. Standing proudly behind a majestic court podium, the Queen dares them to bring forth their witnesses. Alice enthusiastically pushes a highly reluctant Akari forward to serve as the prosecutor against the Queen. Standing nervously at the wooden witness stand, Akari struggles to begin her speech using common sense. The Queen reacts with an amused grunt as Akari argues that rulers are obligated to protect lives. Akari boldly points out that if a ruler fails their duties, the people have no reason to obey. Yugo quietly observes with amusement, realizing Akari is logically invoking John Locke's philosophical theory of revolution. The Queen dismisses the argument by denying such laws exist, but Akari quickly counters her logic. When the Queen asserts absolute lawmaking power, Akari suggests a parliament which the Queen flatly rejects. Completely overwhelmed by the intense legal debate, Akari frantically flees the stand and tags Yugo in. Stepping up to the witness stand, Yugo calmly argues that her absolute authority does not apply to him. The Queen counters that being outside her rule makes Yugo nothing more than an illegal intruder. With the resounding slam of his hand on the wooden stand, Yugo firmly rejects her counterargument. Defiant and loud, Yugo shocks the entire courtroom by declaring they are standing in Nagoya. Akari and Alice watch in stunned disbelief at the bizarre geographical turn Yugo's defense has taken. Yugo explains that since Nagoya is Japanese territory, the Queen has illegally built her castle without permission. Yugo points accusingly, branding the Queen a petty usurper whose lack of legitimacy disrupts social order. Stunned by Yugo's relentless logical deduction, the Queen trembles as he declares her rule a crime. A system notification declares the Queen's legitimacy heavily damaged, instantly granting freedom to all her captives. High above, the cages open up and the captive prisoners safely tumble down onto the floor. Celebrating their logical victory, Yugo watches as the system confirms the card soldiers are temporarily confused. The Queen shrieks in absolute fury as her castle's defenses collapse and her guards fall into disarray. A smug man in a white suit steps forward, declaring they have reached the climax of this tale. A system alert announces updated trial conditions as the humiliated Queen curses the meddling interlopers. Rejecting all logic, the enraged queen breaks her restraints and declares that only brute force matters. The heartless queen transforms into a colossal demonic monster, activating the final boss battle quest. Sharp menacing whoosh rings out as chains whip violently through the air. Yugo and Akari stand shoulder to shoulder, preparing their weapons as the final battle begins. The man in the white suit glares back, caught off guard by the enemy's sudden aggression. Standing calm amidst the glowing red aura, Yugo prepares to face the oncoming waves of soldiers. Akari grins confidently, noting that a reign without virtue never lasts, as Yugo channels magical energy. United and ready, the group prepares to launch a full-scale revolution against the colossal tyrant. Akari turns to Yugo, eagerly asking for his plan as the battle instantly intensifies. Fushimi commands his allies to keep their battle lines aligned and prepare for a full-power interception. Declaring his intention to deliver the first strike, Kuno boldly charges ahead with his mallet. Fushimi watches in surprise as Kuno leaps high, aiming his heavy mallet at a card soldier. A massive crescent arc of brilliant blue energy erupts as Kuno swings his weapon downward. Intense sparks fly as the card soldier raises its heavy red blade to block the hammer. Kuno smiles confidently, acknowledging the card soldier's impressive defensive prowess as they clash head-on. Fushimi frantically screams a warning for the group to watch out as danger approaches. Whipping violently through the air, heavy iron chains are sliced by glowing trails of energy. Kuno calmly tells Fushimi not to panic, proudly asserting that his crew is well-trained. A hooded fighter stands back-to-back with Kuno, preparing his glowing weapon with quiet confidence. Kuno strikes the card soldier with immense blue force, triggering a bright surge of power. Fushimi watches in curiosity as a large golden nail is revealed within Kuno's mallet. Fushimi's shock grows as he realizes Kuno has actually extracted a nail from his weapon. Akari marvels at Kuno's strength, realizing his debuff treats the enemy's defense like extractable nails. Kuno directs Masa to attack, passing him a glowing blue nail as an offensive buff. Masa unleashes a devastating blue-infused strike on the card soldier, creating a blinding explosion. The heavy card soldier is thrown off balance and sent stumbling backward from the impact. Masa successfully blocks the card soldier's heavy retaliatory sword slash, sparks raining down around them. Masa smiles mockingly as his glowing hexagonal shield barrier effortlessly absorbs the card soldier's attack. Fushimi deciphers Kuno's nail transfer buff system and coordinates a synchronized assault with Akari. Launching their joint attack, Fushimi and Akari pierce through the card soldier with a conjured red spear. Fushimi's versatile weapon transforms mid-slash, striking the card soldier's helmet with intense red energy. Fushimi moves with deadly precision, manipulating the flow of red magical energy around his arm. Fushimi's weapon transforms into a scythe, completely severing the card soldier's arm in one swipe. Fushimi and Akari land safely on the wooden floor as Akari prepares her glowing golden pistol. Akari fires her weapon at point-blank range, unleashing a massive blinding golden burst of fire. Kuno praises Fushimi and Akari's synchronization just before his crew warns him of falling guillotine blades. Kuno remains completely unbothered, snorting dismissively as massive blades crash down and explode around him. Akari playfully taunts Kuno about his open defenses, prompting an amused response from him. Ominous dark purple sludge bubbles and rises from the floor, signaling a dangerous magical trap. Enveloped in a sinister purple aura, Fushimi prepares his red dagger with cold, dark determination. Fushimi decides to exploit the terrain debuffs, causing the charging card soldiers to trip mid-ray. The card soldiers tumble helplessly into the purple liquid as Fushimi watches with dark satisfaction. A silhouette of card soldiers approaches from behind, catching Fushimi's eye at a perfect angle. Fushimi ensures that no allies are present in his planned blast zone before launching his attack. Activating his personal armament transformation, Fushimi unleashes a colossal blast of destructive red energy. A massive wave of dark purple and red liquid droplets splashes heavily onto the floor. The Heartless Queen screams in absolute agony as the purple slime splashes over her. A heavy metal blade drops from above, leaving a trail of smoke as it falls. Kuno suddenly appears behind the Queen, politely apologizing for his intrusion as he swings his mallet. Kuno's mallet connects perfectly with a giant blue nail resting against the Queen's back. The glowing blue nail is driven deep into the Queen with a resounding magical shockwave. Fushimi celebrates the successful debuff, but Kuno urgently warns him that it is not enough yet. Kuno grimly explains that the boss is incredibly tough, requiring at least 5 more nails to weaken. The enraged Queen declares they need much more to defeat her, instantly activating a terrain change. Enormous burning logs rise from the floor, shocking Fushimi as the Palau execution ground materializes. The massive oiled copper platforms burn intensely under roaring flames, creating a hellish atmosphere. Fushimi's sweat drops as he recognizes the ancient Chinese torture device favored by Daji. Kuno acknowledges the worsening footing as the glowing Queen looms menacingly amidst the flames. Fushimi and Kuno look on grimly, realizing their battle line will collapse if the fight drags on. Stepping forward, Yugo declares that the next phase of the battle rests on their shoulders. Yugo inflicts a devastating pain debuff on the Heartless Queen, mimicking the agony of a stake. The Heartless Queen mockingly dismisses Yugo's pain debuff as nothing more than a minor mosquito bite. Reeling in sudden agony, the heartless queen gasps as the agonizing feedback unexpectedly catches her off guard. Clutching her head in shock, the queen struggles to comprehend the sudden surge of intense pain. Kari celebrates that Yugo's debuff is working, pointing out how devastating even a minor irritant in the eye can be. Seizing the opening, Kunu drives a second magical nail directly into the giant, struggling queen. Brushing them off as annoying pests, the furious queen unleashes a powerful swipe that shatters the floor. Activating his personal armament, Kunu extends his hammer to drive a third glowing nail into her. The bloodied queen screams in pure rage as the third magical nail pierces her defenses. A sudden, colossal explosion erupts against the queen's chest, taking everyone in the chamber by surprise. Yugo and Kuno peer through the smoke, caught off guard by the unexpected intervention from afar. Yugo quietly observes the battlefield, realizing his direct intervention may not have been necessary this time. Fushimi is relieved as the brown-haired soldier Aimaro arrives alongside his young companion on the battlefield. Kuno offers a polite apology for the trouble, leaving Yugo momentarily silent amidst the chaos. Team Seal's victories within reach as stacked debuffs and powerful reinforcements weaken the queen. High above the battlefield, a mysterious, glowing white orb shines brilliantly against the clear blue sky. The blinding light intensifies, casting a divine glow over the quiet towers of the modern city below. The celestial orb begins to crack and fracture, releasing a volatile surge of dark purple energy. Inside a monitoring facility, a startled technician gasps as her screen suddenly flashes a crimson warning. An emergency alert warns of abnormal sunspots dropping from the solar surface, leaving the staff completely shocked. Panicking, the technician urgently orders her team to transmit this critical emergency data to the field. Back in the blazing chamber, a loud warning echoes, urging everyone to brace for immediate danger. The hunters watch in absolute horror as a menacing, flame-shrouded demon suddenly manifests right before their eyes. Revealing his razor-sharp teeth, the skull-faced demon sinisterly prepares to initiate his brutal assault. An ominous declaration echoes through the crimson dark, signaling the start of a horrifying new battle. Flaunting his bloody razor-sharp claws, the sadistic demon promises to handle his opponents very gently. Gripping his glowing red blade, Yugo steels his resolve to confront the terrifying new threat head-on. Yugo narrows his eyes in sharp focus, carefully analyzing the overwhelming magical pressure of his opponent. With a thunderous roar, Yugo charges forward at full speed, screaming the demon Ricardo's name in fury. Laughing maniacally, Ricardo mockingly praises Yugo's intense killing intent as they prepare to clash. Gritting his teeth in pure concentration, Yugo pours all his magical energy into his incoming strike. Executing a powerful shield bash, Yugo inflicts the crushing sensation of being rammed by heavy armor. Channeling his versatile abilities, Yugo prepares to apply an extra pain-shape add-on to his strike. The force of Yugo's devastating attack blows the skeletal demon backward across the cracked stone floor. Ricardo crashes violently through the stone pillars, engulfed in a massive cloud of dust and fire. Mid-fall, Ricardo cackles with twisted delight, thrilled by Yugo's relentless and explosive display of power. Peering anxiously into the giant crater, Akari frantically screams Yugo's name as the dust settles below. The Heartless Queen suddenly corners Akari, summoning card soldiers while declaring her intent to resume the executions. With glowing red eyes and a sinister scowl, the Queen prepares to eliminate the helpless intruders. Intervening in the nick of time, Fushimi calmly instructs Akari to stay focused on her opponent. Fushimi warns Akari that hesitation means death, quietly sighing about the troublesome timing of the demon's arrival. Reflecting on their situation, Fushimi internally justifies his actions, knowing his strategic retreat saved many allies. Fushimi worries about Yugo's endurance, realizing they will fail the trial if the battle drags on too long. The dark silhouette of the queen looms menacingly, underscoring the absolute urgency of their current situation. Preparing his whip, Fushimi resolves to defeat the queen quickly, silently urging Yugo to survive his fight. Down in the courtyard, Yugo continues his ferocious duel with Ricardo as cracks shatter the fortress walls. Sparks fly wildly as Yugo's fiery red blade clashes head-on with Ricardo's bone-chattering claw attacks. Ricardo praises Yugo's moves, highly amused to find a worthy opponent after such a long time. Ricardo taunts Yugo, claiming that burning black spots to witness his long-awaited comeback was absolutely worth it. Yugo leaps forward, clashing violently with Ricardo as a call urges him to fight harder. Yugo struggles to bypass Ricardo's defenses, realizing his attacks are easily parried while his stats are weakened. Yugo channels his magic into a red spear attack, attempting to pierce his opponent with severe pain feedback. Ricardo reacts in mild surprise as a red energy construct binds him under Yugo's pain-amplifying ability. Yugo unleashes a powerful magical shockwave at point-blank range, blasting Ricardo backward and landing safely on the ground. Landing cleanly, Yugo confidently believes his direct blow to the demon's head must have caused substantial damage. Ricardo suddenly appears right behind Yugo with a sinister chuckle, completely catching the young hunter off guard. Ricardo casually counters with a devastating red energy blast of his own, violently blowing Yugo back. Yugo grimaces in pain, overwhelmed by Ricardo's superior speed, toughness, and sheer physical power. Sliding across the shattered ground, Yugo realizes he cannot hope to defeat the demon in a straightforward duel. Recognizing the tricky tactics of his enemy, Yugo binds Ricardo with chains of heavy red magical energy. Yugo activates an additional pain modifier, attempting to crush the bound demon under immense conjured weight. Yugo watches in sheer disbelief as Ricardo begins effortlessly breaking through the restrictive magical chains. Ricardo mockingly explains that exploiting loopholes in the system is part of the fun of their battle. Yugo swings a massive red blade at the laughing demon, refusing to let the cruel game continue. Yugo fiercely declares that a fight to the death is pure torture, while Ricardo insists it is merely a gain. Ricardo grins maniacally, pointing out that having no extra lives makes the match far more thrilling. Ricardo sweeps his sharp claws toward Yugo's face, seeking to end the battle with maximum tension. Ricardo abruptly stops his attack and looks away as someone else catches his attention from the side. Kuno and Akari prepare to intervene in the duel, determined to strike the demon right now. Kuno drops down from above, ready to swing his massive mallet at the distracted demon. Kuno strikes Ricardo with a blue magical hammer blow, sending a powerful shockwave through the demon. A flashback reveals Fushimi commanding his armored card soldiers to fire a full volley at the boss. A massive wave of explosive magical energy is launched directly toward the targeted enemy. A barrage of powerful explosions repeatedly strikes the Heartless Queen, engulfing her in blinding light. Heartless Queen screams in shock as the heavy bombardment catches her completely off guard. Kuno is astounded by the devastating firepower, noting how quickly the debuffed queen was brought down. Fushimi quietly observes the destructive results, but realizes the battle is far from over yet. The queen begins radiating a sinister purple aura, catching Kuno's attention as her power surges back. Enveloped in dark magic, the Heartless Queen successfully transitions into her formidable second combat form. Fushimi commands another heavy volley, sending more fiery explosions crashing directly into the transforming queen. Emerging from the smoke, the enraged queen curses the hunters for their absolute insolence. Kuno yells in frustration, realizing their attacks are ineffective against such a tough gimmick boss. The heavily armored queen stands menacingly, leaving the hunters to guess the correct mechanics to defeat her. Fushimi explains to Alice that brute forcing the boss is possible but would take far too much time. Fushimi changes plans, instructing Kuno to leave the queen and go assist Yugo instead. Fushimi directs Alice to open a golden portal, sending Kuno to keep Yugo alive in his battle. Akari and her flamingo companion charge forward through the portal, determined to join the fight. Fushimi reluctantly allows Akari to go, warning her that the demon has slain powerful hunters before. A dark, ominous premonition warns that rushing into the battlefield will likely result in death. Akari fires a powerful shot from her rifle, unleashing a brilliant burst of light toward the battlefield. The massive bullet strikes Ricardo's weapon just as Yugo falls back from the intense clash. Ricardo pauses in surprise, noting the unusual and heavy impact of the distant sniper shot. Ricardo looks toward the distant wall, realizing the sniper is firing from an impressive range. Ricardo wonders how such long-range shots can hit so hard, suspecting an elite card is at play. Ricardo grins with twisted excitement, realizing the sniper's ability must have incredibly brutal activation conditions. Akari aims down her sights as her weapon undergoes a transformation into the full sniper rifle. Akari marvels at her personal armament, which adapts perfectly to grant her the exact power she desires. Recalling her past hesitation during a previous trial, Akari explains how she wished for a scoped rifle. Akari explains her realization that even a scoped rifle wouldn't guarantee hits, leading her to seek homing bullets. Observing the fierce battle through her scope, the brown-haired girl prepares to take a massive risk. Gritting her teeth, the brown-haired girl refuses to look away as she prepares to fire her resolute shot. A high-risk condition is revealed, warning that missing will cause severe backlash to the shooter. Squeezing the trigger with intense focus, the brown-haired girl unleashes a fiery shot from her golden rifle. The powerful sniper round detonates directly against the skeletal demon's face in a blinding explosion. Smiling through her sweat, the brown-haired girl admits that her own weapon's power is truly terrifying. Fushimi observes the blast, acknowledging that the brown-haired girl is truly putting her life on the line. Grinning with his gold teeth, the glasses-wearing man decides it is his turn to make a move. Fushimi raises a glowing blue screwdriver to activate his personal armament known as Demolisher. Fushimi prepares to trigger his ability, ramming the glowing screwdriver weapon directly against his own temple. Screaming in determination, Fushimi breaks his inner limiters to forcefully unlock his body's restricted power. The black-haired boy watches in utter shock as he witnesses Fushimi pulling screws from his head. Fushimi channels a massive boost, noting that he will pay a heavy price in recoil later. Surging forward with blue energy, Fushimi gains a massive stat boost despite the danger of collapsing. The black-haired boy accepts the risky gambit, believing a timed power-up is their best current option. Yugo resolves to stall the demon, knowing their only victory condition is surviving until the queen falls. The skeletal demon mockingly praises the black-haired boy's resolute expression, noting his newly steeled determination. Gathering a toxic green aura around his hand, the demon declares he must get serious as well. Yugo and Fushimi widen their eyes in alarm as a dark power begins to surge nearby. Staring at the massive, shadowy serpent towering over the debris, they commit to holding out for 5 minutes. Spin-twirling his massive weapon, the skeletal demon confidently taunts the hunters about the deadly bone serpent. Warning declares that the massive bone serpent stretches without limit, launching an inescapable attack from above. The giant skeletal jaws of the bone serpent snap shut, radiating a deadly dark aura. The colossal serpent easily weaves through the battlefield, moving completely freely to target its prey. Leaping backward with his red sword, Yugo warns that a bite from the head is instantly fatal. Yugo dodges the rotating scales, noting that the bone serpent's chainsaw-like body shreds anything it touches. The serpent's skull jaw bites down hard on the stone, using the impact point to pivot. Ricardo swings his deadly whip weapon with immense momentum, forcing Yugo to leap back and retreat. The move's mechanics are explained, showing how the demon uses the anchor to slingshot the massive body. Yugo defends himself as the bone whip unleashes a chaotic grappling action, tearing across the entire courtyard. With incredible agility, Yugo leaps over the thrashing bone serpent while keeping his sword raised high. Fushimi dives downward, wielding a massive glowing blue wrench to strike at the bone serpent's body. A resounding clang echoes as Fushimi's giant wrench collides violently with the bone serpent, throwing sparks. Gritting his teeth, Yugo realizes that sufficient physical force can snap the bone segments apart. The system notes that while severed pieces of the serpent slow down, a new threat arises. The shattered segments of the skeletal serpent begin radiating a vibrant green magical energy in midair. Yugo despairs as the segments instantly reconnect, but Fushimi calmly reveals he has a clever plan. Fushimi confirms his plan with a confident grin, preparing to unleash his Demolisher weapon's secret ability. Surging with intense blue light, Fushimi leaps directly toward the colossal bone serpent once more. Fushimi tightly grips the golden handle of his high-tech wrench weapon as blue flames envelop him. Swinging his massive tool down with a roar, Fushimi initiates his devastating signature technique, Wrench Twist. The heavy ridge clamps perfectly onto a glowing bolt embedded within the serpent's skeletal neck. With a brilliant burst of light, the giant skeletal head of the bone serpent pops loose. Yugo reacts in stunned surprise as the terrifying bone serpent's head suddenly detaches and hangs limp. The skull-faced demon gasps in surprise, completely caught off guard by the unexpected sabotage of his weapon. Fushimi explains that his debuff loosened the joints, though he needs more turns to dismantle it completely. Fushimi declares that the loose joints will make the serpent weapon completely uncontrollable for 3 minutes. Yugo realizes debuffing the weapon is far more effective, celebrating that they successfully sealed the threat. Smiling sinisterly, the skull demon commends Fushimi's fine ability as his claws glow with green energy. Ricardo compresses his weapon into a tight axe-like shape, trading his long reach for overwhelming power. Yugo swings his glowing red sword, unleashing a bright flash of light against his foe. The skull-faced demon looms as Kuno, the glasses-wearing man, charges forward, shouting in determination. With a powerful leap, Kuno strikes the skull-faced demon directly with his giant blue hammer. The massive bone serpent slithers menacingly, its icy skeletal structure radiating a chilling aura. Bashing the demon with his glowing weapon, Kuno forces a painful shriek from the skull-faced beast. Shocked by Kuno's strength, the black-haired boy realizes that the loosened joints of the bone serpent have significantly reduced the force behind the demon's swings, allowing Kuno to stand his ground. Watching Kuno prepare, the black-haired boy wonders if a massive attack is coming, reasoning that since it won't be enough to finish the demon, it must be intended to bind the enemy instead. Black-haired boy knows standard chains won't be enough to stop the beast, but hopes to exploit the slow startup of such a large-scale binding move. A sudden beam of brilliant light strikes the skull-faced demon's face, catching him completely off guard. Breathing heavily, the brown-haired girl grips her golden rifle, staying focused on the battlefield. Engulfed in a brilliant shockwave of blue light, the skull-faced demon screeches in agony. Looking relieved, the black-haired boy praises Akari's timely and precise shot. A dark system notification announces the activation of a personal armament called Shape of Pain, initiating a transformation. Swirling red energy envelops the skull-faced demon as his terrifying eyes glow with malicious intent. Shocked by the surging aura, the glasses-wearing man remarks on the incredible rare level of power, even for a Silver Bear-class opponent. Swirling crimson waves crash violently as Yugo pushes himself to his current output limit. Determined to contain the demon, the black-haired boy vows not to let him escape, aiming to trap him in the center of the vortex. The black-haired boy calculates that the water pressure will strip the demon's control over the bone serpent, noting his output is higher than the last demon fall. The black-haired boy resolves to seal the threat completely, willing to burn through all his power to secure victory. The black-haired boy suddenly freezes in surprise, his eye widening as he notices something unexpected. The skull-faced demon notices the surrounding water level beginning to drop, realizing it does not bode well for his opponents. The system prompt reveals the demon's armament ability, Flesh Eater Bone Serpent. The black-haired boy looks on in horror as a massive green skeletal maw prepares to consume the entire vortex. Kuno leaps forward with his hammer, shouting for the demon to shut its mouth as he strikes. In a brutal counterattack, the demon slashes Kuno's torso, spraying blood across the battlefield. Kuno's glasses fly off as he recoils from the devastating and bloody strike. A sudden system alert flashes across the dark screen, delivering breaking news to the hunters. Online messengers show citizens panicking about the demon's appearance, expressing condolences for a beloved Silver Bear-class hunter. The online forum warns that even a gold lion was killed by this demon before raising extreme concern for the front lines. The vicious demon lunges forward to strike again as blood splatters across the red sky. Bleeding heavily, Kuno struggles to keep his eyes open as the brutal onslaught continues. The black-haired boy screams Kuno's name in sheer panic as blood rains down around him. Kuno stands tall despite the massive bleeding gash torn into the side of his suit. The skull-faced demon mockingly praises Kuno's veteran reflexes for dodging a fatal heart blow, noting it only means he will suffer longer. Gritting his teeth, the black-haired boy swings his red blade to defend his fallen ally. Grinning maniacally, the skull-faced demon declares that one hunter is down and mockingly asks Hugo what he will do next. Filled with pure rage, the sweating black-haired boy glares intensely at the mocking demon. Kuno places a hand on the black-haired boy's shoulder, asking why he is freaking out. Defiantly, Kuno declares that he is still going strong and is not done fighting yet. Realizing that Kuno has cut his brain's limiter, the skull-faced demon gleefully demands they continue their deadly game until they die. Hugo urges Kuno to fall back, but Kuno bluntly refuses, pointing out that Hugo cannot last on his own. Kuno calculates they have 2 minutes left until backup arrives, struggling through blurry vision from his massive gut wound. Kuno solemnly remembers Masa, wondering if his late companion also suffered immense pain or if death came too quickly. A nostalgic voice breaks through the darkness, asking about a transition into soldier work. In a flashback, a young laborer wipes sweat from his face after a long shift. Younger Kuno explains his decision to pursue more lucrative work, wanting to make a name for himself rather than stick to low-paying dismantling. Kuno expresses his frustration with the constant threat of demon falls, noting how everyone lives in perpetual fear of sudden disasters. The coworker laments how gloomy the city has become, fondly recalling Nagoya's warm and lively past. Kuno claims he won't force anyone to join him and is prepared to go alone, earning a playful protest. His loyal companions step forward, promising to follow Kuno anywhere since he rescued them when they were just smoldering nobodies. In a nostalgic memory, his loyal companion reminds him that being a boss means staying dedicated until the very end. Kuno agrees with a grin, unable to dispute his companion's heartfelt philosophy on leadership. The two companions solidify their lifelong bond with a firm, trustful fist bump. A teammate playfully comments on Kuno's flashy style as he proudly embraces his new soldier persona.
His crew teases him that his flashy style and gold tooth make him look like Yakuza, ruining his public image.
On a crimson battlefield, Kuno rallies his loyal men who fearlessly vow to fight alongside him. Clinging to those warm memories, a heavily injured Kuno prepares for one final strike. A frantic realization warns that if action isn't taken immediately, Kuno won't survive. Akari raises her golden rifle, ready to intervene in the deadly battle unfolding ahead. Despite the danger, Akari runs into the fray, determined to help since Hugo has reached his absolute limit. Alice tries to stop Akari, warning that jumping into such a deadly fight will surely kill her. Akari refuses to stay back, declaring that she must stand by her partner who is risking everything. Red-armored knight suddenly ambushes them, catching the girls completely off guard. A sudden, powerful blast obliterates the ambushing knight, leaving Alice staring in utter shock. Akari immediately checks on Alice's safety after quickly neutralizing the enemy threat. Alice points out that Akari didn't need to save her since the trial's goal had already been met. Alice reiterates that her safe delivery to the castle has already been fully achieved. Alice explains that because her objective is complete, her role in this scenario has ended. Alice questions the purpose of saving her, explaining she will inevitably vanish when the stage closes. Akari realizes Alice is just a temporary event character, but keeps pulling her along regardless. Akari explains she cannot treat Alice like an object after interacting as humans this whole time. Akari urges Alice to stay true to her role until the very end of her temporary existence. Transforming into her true form, Alice prepares to unleash her hidden, ominous powers. A gentle piece of advice resonates in the darkness, urging her to define her own destiny. Alice smiles softly as she resolves to accept the advice and play a new role. Back in the main arena, Hugo fiercely clashes blades with the terrifying skull-faced demon. The demon marvels at Hugo's uncanny ability to grow even sharper when pushed to his limits. Despite his focus, the immense physical backlash of Hugo's heavy attacks takes a severe toll.
A grim realization notes that Yugo's stamina is rapidly failing under the intense pressure.
Kuno lands a devastating hit, dealing massive damage to the skull-faced opponent.
Exploiting the opening, Kunu swings his massive hammer for another heavy blow against the beast.
With grim resolve, Kuno prepares to drag his terrifying enemy to the grave with him. Akari leaps in heroically, executing a point-blank burst shot to save Kuno in the nick of time. The irritated demon mutters, wondering what kind of game his ally Dorothy is currently playing. Alice raises her hand, conjuring a massive barrier of golden light to block the path.
The demon notices that Alice is defying her programming by stepping outside her preset role.
Yugo gasps in utter horror as the heavily bleeding Kuno suddenly collapses onto the ground.
System notification confirms that Kuno's dangerous limit or break state has officially ended.
The mocking demon gloats that Kuno's final effort only bought them a few useless seconds. The demon unleashes his bone serpent to crush Akari, aiming to pile up more bodies. Filled with terror, Yugo screams Akari's name as the deadly bone serpent lunges at her.
Quiet resolve whispers in the darkness, refusing to let tragedy repeat itself this time. A towering, ancient aquatic beast suddenly manifests behind the unsuspecting Akari.
The brief moments bought by Kuno's sacrifice begin to yield a major change in battle. A colossal torrent of water erupts, sending the bone serpent crashing backward into the sky. Swirling in a massive vortex of water, the stunned demon struggles to comprehend the intervention.
The demon realizes that the precious extra seconds allowed their true defender to arrive. The legendary hero arrives, ready to erase one of his deepest long-held regrets.
A golden status window dramatically reveals the arrival of a prestigious Gold Lion-class soldier.
The system window confirms his legendary identity, the formidable and long-awaited Masataka Sago.
In a dark room, a protective father hides with his young daughter, desperately whispering for her to remain quiet. The little girl excitedly shows her father a magical glowing bubble, explaining she received it from a kind man. Amidst the ruins of the castle, Yugo stares in disbelief as he recognizes Sago's unexpected arrival.
Esegal rushes to join him. Yugo worries about their chances facing a powerful demon with so few allies.
Sago expresses remorse for his tardiness, self-deprecatingly labeling himself a failure of a soldier.
Sago explains to the black-haired boy that he prioritizes rescuing helpless civilians over entering direct combat.
Ricardo, the skull-faced demon, mockingly notes Sago's fashionable but incredibly delayed arrival. Sago greets the demon, noting that 2 years have passed since their last encounter. Sago suddenly makes a secret hand signal behind his back, reflecting on his assumptions about the front line.
Sago observes Kunu's grave condition while the mocking demon ridicules his savior complex.
Observing Sago's secret signal, Akari remains on guard with her rifle as Yugo walks forward.
Ricardo maliciously reminds Sago of his painful past, declaring his deceased daughter will never return. Acknowledging the demon's cruel words, Sago proudly draws his blue weapon to activate his Breath of Heart armament.
Glowing blue energy and bubbles swirl around Sago's feet as he prepares to unleash his power.
With fierce determination, Sago vows to fight so that no more families suffer the tragedy of loss. Ricardo clicks his tongue in deep annoyance at Sago's stubborn resolve. Ricardo finds himself heavily weighed down and restricted by the bouncy, durable bubbles surrounding him.
Realizing the bubbles are a major obstacle, Ricardo decides to bypass them and attack Sago directly.
Sago's specialized bubbles detonate in a massive blinding flash of light that blasts Ricardo backward.
Ricardo cries out in sudden pain as the explosive force of the bubble slams into him.
Ricardo is sent reeling as the resilient bubbles bounce him around with rhythmic pulsing force.
Sago swings his staff to launch a crushing aquatic wave, sending the demon flying into the air.
Ricardo grunts in pain as the devastating pressure of the water blast hits him head-on.
The skull-faced demon is sent spinning helplessly through the air from the sheer impact.
Swept away in a colossal torrent of water, Ricardo screams as he is dragged into a vortex. Submerged in the crushing pressure, Ricardo frantically notes the impossibility of fighting in Sago's aquatic domain.
Struggling against the relentless water currents, Ricardo desperately shouts to free himself.
Realizing he is wasting precious time in the sluggish vortex, Ricardo spots an opening to escape. Riding his massive bone serpent, Ricardo leaps toward an area completely clear of Sago's bubbles. Ricardo decides to switch his target to Aimaru since he cannot easily engage with Yugo. Ricardo plots to throw the battlefield into complete chaos to isolate Sago from his allies. Sago calmly notes that the demon chose to land far away due to his hatred of the bubbles. Feeling satisfied with his new vantage point, the skull-faced demon grinningly declares the situation perfect. A sudden spark of dark red energy crackles across the black-haired boy's shirt.
Clutching his chest, Yugo is suddenly overwhelmed by a terrifying and painful flashback.
A hand adorned with gold rings gently reaches out to steady the trembling black-haired boy.
Despite his severe wounds, Kuno steps up to hold Yugo steady, offering his unwavering support.
Kuno flashes a bloody, gold-toothed grin as Yugo watches in absolute shock. Fueled by intense rage and determination, Yugo screams as a violent crimson aura erupts around him. Panting heavily, Yugo stands enveloped in a raging, crackling shroud of dark red energy.
Yugo turns back in alarm to check on Canoe, who apologizes for pushing both of them so hard.
Seigo explains that Ricardo despises fighting him because their combat styles are completely incompatible. Seigo admits that while stall tactics are easy, the demon's incredible mobility makes containment difficult.
Seigo explains that Yugo's presence is crucial to exploit the demon's deep fixation on him. Sago smiles warmly, expressing his gratitude that Yugo remembered the hand signal from 8 years ago.
The black-haired boy replies with a gentle, appreciative smile of his own. Seigo's thoughts drift to their past coordination, remembering how often they successfully executed that tactical landing sequence. Seigo commends Yugo, noting that the boy's sharpness has far surpassed his past self. Sago observes that in a drawn-out, complex battle, Sago is easily the gold standard of gold lions. A sinister voice echoes from the massive hole in the wall, expressing cold amusement. A massive, terrifying skull-shaped mountain peak looms ominously under a dark, stormy sky. Ricardo leaps down from the castle walls, unleashing his deadly bone serpent into the fray. A colossal clawed foot crashes down violently, forcing the shocked black-haired boy to stand his ground. The skull-faced demon targets Yugo directly, gathering crackling purple energy in his clawed hand. The ground shatters into pieces with a deafening crash as a furious voice cries out. The white-haired queen in red bellows in absolute rage, initiating a deadly domain shift. Crimson pillars violently burst from the earth, impaling several helpless knights in a brutal attack.
Warnings echo across the battlefield to keep moving as Yugo narrowly dodges the rising spikes. Yugo watches in astonishment as a dark dragon flies away from a heavily damaged stone tower.